You know what that means.
Rich Eccles said that he's taking his daughter to dancing class, and he'll be fading in and out probably.
Okay, but we have our quorum to start, and other folks can just jump in. Right, I'm going to call to order this special meeting of the Neshoba Regional School Committee. And as always, we will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Steve, you got your flag?
Yep.
Yay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. I do have some citizens' comments. The first one is from Amy Keogh, who lives in Stowe. I respectfully ask if there has to be a Zoom meeting to discuss the reopening of schools because it is deemed unsafe to meet in person. Should we really be considering reopening in any capacity? The next one comes from Haiti Leclerc, who lives in Lancaster. Like the district to hold Zoom meetings weekly to let parents and guardians know what they are doing when it comes to reopening in the fall. Meetings in which parents and guardians can ask questions and get answers as much as possible. I understand that we are in uncharted territory and everyone is trying to figure out what to do with a changing set of directions, but I don't believe that's any reason to not communicate regularly with parents and guardians. We are all scared for our kids, our teachers, and all the school staff and bus drivers. I am aware that the governor has asked that we prioritize in-school education and that the Commissioner of Education has asked schools not to announce their plans to return until sometimes in August. I strongly disagree with both these approaches. We should be prioritizing how we handle remote learning because we cannot have a repeat of the spring learning experience. Without locking down our state, it seems likely that we will have some remote learning this year. Other districts, as I'm sure you've seen, are communicating with parents and guardians. Other districts are releasing plans and asking for participation and feedback on these plans. Other districts close by also had much more productive online learning models in spring. They had consistent schedules and students had regular meetings with teachers. For Neshoba School District's remote or hybrid learning model, we need teachers who know how to remote teach. It's not the same, and the teachers need to also be able to use the district's chosen technology proficiently. We need students to have a regular and reliable schedule with video lessons and meetings. We need clear assignments and particular schedules on a Google Calendar with reminders and regular and consistent feedback from teachers. We need to know how our district will protect and assist our most vulnerable students so they have access to food, a place where they are safe from abuse, and real support for children with special needs. We need to know how our district will help those who need to return to work but also need their children to have childcare and cannot afford both. For in-school education, we need guidelines from our school district on what will happen in case of COVID exposure. Even if this is up to the Board of Health, I certainly hope that NRSD is communicating with both the Board of Education has guidelines in place. Everyone knows that these are unprecedented times and guidelines are shifting. We don't expect something to be set in stone, but if it changes, that change should be proactively communicated along with the reasons for change. I think our state needs to address this and more, but at least I want our district to be thoughtful and transparent about our path through the next months. The anxiety level is very high for parents and guardians and teachers and staff, and lack of information aids no one. I also urge the district or committee, whichever is appropriate, to inform the parents and guardians of the district via email and in any other way possible to communicate upcoming meetings, what the agenda is, how to access the current meeting, a link at minimum, calendar invitation ideally, where to find minutes of previous meetings, and to allow attendees to ask questions during the meeting. The next comment is from Nikki McGatchy, and Nikki says, she lives in Bolton. Let me say a big thank you for the incredible amount of work you're all doing. This has been an unprecedented year, and I know you've put in countless more hours than I can imagine. Thank you for your passion and commitment. As the clock ticks progressively towards September, conversations have started focusing on how to open schools back up in the safest way possible. There is still so much we don't know about COVID, but one thing has become clear is that the transmission of the virus is dramatically reduced in the outdoor environment. One review of 7,000 cases in China found only one instance of transmission that occurred outdoors between two friends engaged in a long conversation. To me, this indicates that we should be prioritizing moving our young people into outdoor learning environments as much as humanly possible. Outdoor and open air schooling isn't new. In fact, in the early 20th century, it saved the lives of countless children from tuberculosis. Many of these schools are in New York and along the East Coast in climates very similar to our own. Likewise, having our children spend as much time as possible in outdoor learning spaces will reduce the chances of COVID transmission while still allowing for the in-person interaction with teachers and peers that our kids desperately need. This could be especially important for the youngest children who are not going to get the social and emotional development they need from virtual learning, no matter how wonderful the online platform is. Even if there isn't enough space or resources to move everyone outside, shifting as many of the kids as possible will still mitigate the risk for those who are indoors. There are obviously hurdles to this approach, many things that need to be worked through, logistics, weather, and bugs, to name a few. But given what we are facing, I don't believe these hurdles are insurmountable if we approach them with a hefty dose of out-of-the-box thinking, hard work, and a flexible attitude. I hope that my eagerness is not impeded by the fact that I do not have a background in education and thus don't have intimate knowledge of the complexities of a modern school system. But what I do have is a background in planning outdoor events and a lot of experience in creative problem solving with limited resources. I am happy to lend my particular skill set in any way that I can, and I know that many members of our community feel the same way. And then one more. This is from Patrick Mahoney, who lives in Stowe. While there's a lot we still don't know about COVID-19, we do know some of the major things to avoid. They include prolonged close contact, indoor clustering, buildings with aging ventilation systems, and exposure to high-tech surfaces. The fact that the school committee meetings are remote proves the point. You won't risk gathering in a classroom to conduct meetings, which is a wise decision made to protect yourselves, your family, and our community. It's not safe for you. It's not safe for students and teachers. I realize that remote learning is painful and fraught with its own challenges and issues. It is not a suitable replacement for in-school education by any means. For many parents, it creates a nightmare scenario at home and with employers. And overall, if kids are home and parents are not working, then the thinking goes that business will suffer and the economy will grind to a halt. But that's not a school's problem to solve, and it's not our kids' burden to bear. We are experiencing a failure of imagination related to keeping the economy and our citizens while we fight the pandemic. There are plenty of reasonable options, but rolling the dice by sending kids and teachers into the fire is not one of them. Unless you personally would be willing to spend 6+ hours a day in a school building, please be consistent and use your platform to advocate for full-time remote learning this fall until a return to in-person education is not a health risk. Okay, that is it for citizens' comments. The next item on the agenda is promoting equity, acceptance, and racial justice. And I was able to connect with Karen Thompson from the Initiatives for Developing Equity and Acceptance, the acronym IDEAS, through the EDCO Collaborative. And we are going to explore some options with EDCO, but not till later in the fall. They're very busy with summer work, and we obviously are very busy getting school started, but I do want an opportunity to look at some other options, but I thought I would share with you some of the things that they offer. And they customize based on what they have some programs that are already in place, but they're willing to customize. They do workshops on race, racism tailored to school committees, business office staff, cafeteria staff, paraprofessionals, custodians, and parents. They have workshops on systems of advantage and disadvantage, implicit bias and microaggressions, how to respond to microaggressions, how to talk about race and racism and other isms with colleagues, students, parents, and guardians, what is cultural competence, and culturally responsive teaching. Now, those are just some of examples of what they offer. And hopefully by the time we have our summer workshop, we can perhaps engage in a conversation around this, and hopefully I will have other information to share about what's available to the school committee in terms of our own in-service. So any questions for me on any of that? Okay, thank you. So next I have some things under school committee chair updates. I sent out the committee assignments, and Alita, once they have been accepted, if you could please add them to the meeting materials. So I hope everyone on the committee had an opportunity to look at the assignments. Does anyone have any questions or any requests for change relative to these assignments? There's so many people here. I'm trying to, if you're on the committee and you want to say something, put your hand up like this so I can see it, and don't use that thing on the bottom because I don't look down there. So am I assuming that if everyone is okay with the assignments? Elaine, would you make the motion, please?
Sure. I move to accept the 2020-2021 subcommittee assignments as presented by the chair.
Can I have a second? Steve seconded. Okay, any discussion or comments? So what I would like folks to do, the people listening, you could find the time to connect and the secretary. And then especially under policy and everything except communication.
So Kathy, I think it's really hard.
Yeah, there's some static. I don't know.
Or I don't know whether somebody's opening something, or I'm not sure exactly what it is, but can you say that last little bit again, please? Because I certainly couldn't hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to point out that I had listed something.
I think everybody should mute, Kathy.
Oh,
Everybody
okay.
needs to mute.
Except me, right? Because I'm talking.
Right.
There, that's much better.
Okay,
We're good.
thank you. Thank you. Sorry. All right. So under policy, we had some stuff left over from last year that needs to be followed up on. And I know that Anne Marie was working with us on some things, and that Dorothy Presser is always available to consult with policy. And then at some point, want to talk about whether we need a policy on core values, or if there is a way to make sure that the things that we do, our practices and protocols, are consistent with our core values. But we need to, they're on the district improvement plan. We need to add equity, acceptance, and racial justice. But how we go about doing that, whether it's policy or some other way, I think Dorothy Presser could be helpful with that. And if there are other things that policy wants to look at, then you just bring that forward. Personnel is pretty straightforward. Focus on the superintendent evaluation and the manual update. And then the budget and warrant, all I have the task for you. You have your regular things that you've been doing. But last year, I thought it was a really good idea to have the orientation for the new members to the budget process early on in the process, so they know what to expect. And then with regard to communication, I know that personnel was looking at that last year. If there are some threads that we need to pick up from last year or any new initiatives, we can certainly talk with that. But once you have a chair selected, if that person can contact me, maybe we could talk about some of the agenda items. So that's all I have. So any other comments or discussion? Leah.
So I'm just wondering, our first subcommittee meeting should be scheduled in September.
I think that's fine. I think we're over. I think our goal now, because we're going to have to meet some more, I think we're fine waiting until September. It gives everybody a chance to to have some summertime and also be present for all the other committees we're on having to do with the opening of school.
And so I guess my last question would be, because policy, I think, is unique in this current environment, do you think that it's important for policy to maybe meet in the summer in case administration needs policies adjusted or amended?
Maybe, but I have something I'm going to bring up later relative to policy that may be germane to that. So let's leave that open-ended for now, if that's okay. Mary?
I would
Mary.
like to thank, yes. Am I muted? No, I'm on, right? I want to thank our new members for being with us, because what this means is that each of us right now has one subcommittee responsibility. We may pick up more, but to have our new members to be able to share this with you, thank you so much.
Great point, Mary. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I have to do a roll call vote. All those in favor of accepting the subcommittee assignments as presented? Elaine?
Yes.
Kathy, yes. Mary?
Yes.
Steve? Amy?
Yes.
All right, if you're not talking, could you mute anybody, anyone who's not? All right, thank you. Joseph?
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
Yes. Let me see. Sharon?
Yes.
Wait a minute. Mike, is that you? You gotta unmute. It says BLI remote.
I know, I'm gonna log off and then log back in.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure it was you before I asked you to vote. You look a little different.
Yeah.
But not in a bad way. All right, did I get everybody? Alita, did I get everybody? Oh, Rich Eckel.
So I didn't actually hear the assignment, so I'm abstaining.
Okay, so, and Brett's not here, so I think it is, I can't even do the math. 9 yes, 1 abstention, and 1 person is absent. Is that correct, Alita? Is it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Good. All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so
Hey,
the next
Hey,
item.
Kathy?
Yes.
Kat, this is Rich Echo. Would you mind just telling me what my assignment was? I dropped out right at the wrong time.
Sorry. You mean you didn't do your homework and look at this list I sent out?
I'm sorry, I must have overlooked it.
I don't know, Rich. I might have to kick you off the island. I don't know. Well, I hope this is okay with you. You're on the Budget and Warrant Committee with Joseph Gleason and Steve Rubenstein.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, graduation. So I have down that I'm going, Brett's going, and Steve's going. Is there anyone else who's going? Now, you do not have to go. If you're gonna go, you get preferred parking and preferred seating. So I just want to make sure that anybody who wants to go is going. So I'm just going to go. Just if you're not going to go, just shake your head no. Elaine, Mary, Steve's going. I got you 2 seats. Amy, Joseph, Leah, Sharon. Rich. Okay, I think I got everybody. Okay, and I forwarded an email to the folks that are going. All right, summer workshop. Most people have responded. I sent a reminder out. Right now, it looks like it's going to be August 25th at 5 o'clock. Right now, the only person who can't make that date is Rich. And so, but that was the only date where everybody else could go. We'll talk more about it as the summer wears on in terms of what the agenda will be. I think there are topics that people on the committee want to discuss, want to talk about goals for the year. So we need to review our protocols and then look at the master planning calendar and also work with Brooke on the topics that are of interest and importance to us. Okay?
I think
Any
Amy has a
questions about
question.
the summer workshop? Oh, Amy.
Yeah, I apologize, but when you say you sent a reminder about
Oh, no,
that?
only you responded like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything more recent.
No, I sent a reminder to those people who just blew me off on it. So they know who they are. I don't have to mention names. All right. Anything else on the summer workshop? Okay. Oh, okay. All right. New member orientation with MASC. There are two things: charting the course, which is the big in service, and included with the meeting materials is information about that. New members have a year to complete that. They're offering some things over the summer, but do not feel that you have to take that. But I have spoken to Dorothy Presser about doing just a small workshop on either August 17th or 18th for about an hour. And it would be like a half hour of information and then the rest of the time for any questions. So it might be less than an hour. So I heard from Amy and Rich. Did you see that email?
I did.
Are you able to join us?
That sounds fine to me. But yep, that sounds great.
Either date work for you?
Either day.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I just have to check with Brett, and Sharon is unavailable, and that's okay. Amy Cohen. And then just check that. Okay, that's good. All right. Additional meeting. I think that what we're going to find out, if we haven't already realized it, is that we're at the beginning of a long process in terms of reopening of school, and it's going to require that we meet additionally. Now, but also keep in mind that as long as we have our quorum of 8 people, we're good. So if there are times when you can't attend the meeting, you need to let me know immediately so I make sure that we have a quorum to meet. So what I am proposing is that we schedule an additional meeting for a week from tonight, July 29th at 6 p.m. And the only agenda item will have to do with reopening plans. Elaine, do you want to make a motion?
Sure. I move to amend the 2020-2021 school committee meeting calendar to a school committee meeting on August 2020 at 6 p.m.
I have a feeling, I wonder, Joseph, if that's maybe yours. There, it's gone. Yeah. I'm not sure what it is that's doing it.
But I second the motion.
Thanks, Leah. Sorry.
Okay. Any questions? All right, I'll do the roll call vote. Oh, Amy.
Is there a way to allow more involvement in this next meeting from?
Let's table that for now and we'll take it up under another part of the agenda.
Okay.
But right now we're focused on the vote to have the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Elaine.
Yes.
Kathy, yes. Mary. Steve.
Yes.
Amy. Joseph.
Yes.
Leah.
Yes.
Find everybody.
Sharon?
Oh, Sharon.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so I think that's 10 in favor. So if something comes up and you can't be part of it, please let me know as soon as possible. All right, so I am going to turn the agenda over.
I think Mary has a question.
Oh, yes, Mary. Mary, you have to unmute.
I thought I was. Technical question. Something, I have new earbuds and some people have headphones. Something is happening and with somebody that produces an excruciating sound. And so I know it's happening to Amy. I don't know if it's happening to Joe. Yeah, and I'm just
Happening to
wondering
Steve.
whether we could figure this out, because I thought it was so exciting that I had these new Apple earbuds, but not if I'm going to be bombarded. I have to, like put my hands over my ears. So I
Well, we
don't
have
know.
Suchi here. Maybe he has a clue.
That's what I'm thinking.
It's without actually seeing it, it's kind of hard to say exactly what caused issue. But the noise I heard earlier, it sounds like it's just something like it's touching it, or like it's really hard to say what caused the issue. It's without seeing it. But I think it's for now. Let's just mute it if you're not speaking.
So just mute if we're not speaking.
Yeah.
Right, let's try that. Okay. Very
Hey,
good.
Kathy,
Yes, Rich.
if Alita can also see, if she clicks on participants, you can see what microphone is active, or whoever's holding the control, the Zoom conference controls. And if
Yep.
she sees that their microphone's going up and down, she can just mute people that are not muted.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. Okay. So superintendent's update. Okay, Brooke.
Actually, I'm going to go through just a couple of quick items here. This will be very short. With regards to the high school mascot, I have had conversations with both Tanya Rich and Steve Cullinane, who is the interim principal at this point in time. I know he's had problems trying to get on, so I'm not sure if he's on with us. Yes, there he is. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So we've had some conversations about this, and we're really looking at trying to start the work probably about late September. I also want to put a shout out to those coaches who have connected with us right away and said, like, please involve us. We'd love to help do this, to do the rebranding. I've had students also reach out to me as well who've had interest in it. So it's been positive along those lines. So I'm very, very appreciative of those folks who have reached out. We've also had folks reach out and suggest that they help us out to do some pro bono work in this area, and we're wanting to take advantage of that as well. And so we've had ongoing conversations with those folks, and so I think that we'll wait and see what school. Right now, the key is to get us back in, and then we'll start looking at these other things such as the mascot. But right now, that's where we're looking at. So probably mid to late September before we start the heavy load on that. Okay. With the MSBA update, that will be quick as well. You'll recall that I had asked for an extension in terms of like a later start, if you will, for our eligibility period, and we were granted that. And so that's going to start on August 1st. Brittany Gomes is the individual who oversees our particular project during this particular phase. And so she's reached out. I've had a lot of communication with MSBA over the course of the last several months. And so this is just the next part of the evolution of this process. And so we're looking at having a meeting with several different interested stakeholders at some point in time next week. Very similar to the type of call, Kathy, that you took in when we had the readiness call. That's what this type of call is as well. So I'll be reaching out to one or two of you here in the next week or so. Brittany sent out 2 possible dates and times today, and so I'll ship those out. So we're so excited. I mean, I said that, I think one of the school committee members said that to me tonight, this is so exciting. And I said, that's exactly what I said to MSBA, to get to this next level. And I also want to say a special thank you. I know I put it out on Twitter, but I just want to take this opportunity again to thank our communities. You know, I know when we were at Lancaster was the first one to vote yes. And that feeling when we turned around and they had called the vote, Kathy, right just before we had turned around. So they called the vote and we had not turned around. And of course, that was a drive-in, and everybody had the cards that they were putting outside of the cars. And you know, to see the sea of green for yes was unbelievably emotional. I mean, for me, it was just, I mean, I know that we worked so hard behind the scenes, but to see that many yeses was just, oh my gosh, that was just a melt your heart moment. In fact, I think I turned to Todd as we were walking back. I think I'm going to start crying because it was just so emotional. And within minutes, we received, I think, Mike, I think it was you who sent a text to me saying Bolton had just approved theirs. And I know that Mike did a great job there, just like Kathy, you did a great job in Lancaster. And then, of course, that left us with Stowe. And so, you know, you're thinking, gosh, we've got 2 out of the 3. We only need the third one. And I know that Leah and Aline put so much work and Steve into that. And Leah, you did a fabulous job that day. We thank you so much for presenting. And the one question that came up, and you answered it perfectly. The only thing I could add was that it was a 5-year rolling average, but your response was perfect. And then to receive the overwhelming support in Stowe to, you know, none of these passed by a 50% margin. They all passed like just like with landslide type votes. So we just want to thank our communities for getting us here. And as we take a look at the next step, and I think the one thing I really want to stress, and I know I said this before, but I want to say this again, this building has nothing to do with administration. This is not a superintendent's project or a principal's project, or this is something for the community. This is something for the future of your children and the future of the wellness and the health of your community. And to see your community support this like this was just amazing. So shout out to all of our communities for their hard work and efforts to get us where we are today. So thank you for that.
Okay. Is that all for MSBA?
Yes, that's all for MSBA. Thank you.
Okay, so Brooke's going to talk about the reopening plan. I'd like to tee it up with just some brief comments. First of all, we're going to hear from a lot of the folks who are on the meeting with us, and I want to welcome them and thank them for being here tonight, and also for all the time and effort that they have dedicated to this project. With you know, I think the Commissioner of Education, one of his favorite things to say is you have to be comfortable with ambiguity. It's a lot easier to be comfortable with ambiguity when you have such a strong, skillful, committed leadership team. So I want to thank everyone for their hard work and just the countless hours that you've spent on this. And we know there's more work to do. I also want to mention the process. A couple of people, we got emails from people talking about other districts have their plans out, and there's stuff on the news, other districts have their plans out. Most districts do not. What they have put out were the 3 options that the DESE gave us and said, these are the options. They're not the plans. And I think that it's important that people understand that the school committee has to approve the plan. And we are beginning tonight to get the information that we need to ultimately give the go-ahead to whatever we do. But there's still a lot more to do. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered. And Brooke's going to go into some of the processes that the different schools and the district will engage in. So I just want people to be aware of that. As far as I know, I'm not aware of any district that has nailed down their plan as of yet. And then I also want to send a message to our school community about the anxiety and understanding the anxiety all around. I mean, the normal way of doing business for us is that when we leave at the end of June to enjoy the summer, we're all ready to start the school year for the most part. And then, you know, you tweak over the summertime. This is so unusual, and not knowing creates a whole other layer of stressors. And there are layers having to do with health and safety and learning and all sorts of things. But we're going to get to all of those things tonight, and then continue with the discussion next week as well. School committee has received a MASC guide to the school committee's role in reopening. And Alita, if you don't have that, I will send it to you to include in the meeting notes. But the big things, it lays out the questions, and then looking at what they have recommended we ask and briefing for this meeting with Brooke, I think we can check a lot of these boxes off. But it's ultimately the school committee that signs off on a back to school plan. One of the issues that, and I think Leah, you mentioned it about policies. We sort of have a safety net if we need it. We actually have a policy, BGF, suspension of policies, and it's the operation of any section or sections of school committee policies not established by law or contract may be temporarily suspended by a 2/3 vote of committee members at any regular or special meeting. Any action to suspend policy must be reviewed at the next scheduled meeting and be so noted on the agenda for the meeting. So instead of having to go policy by policy, it just can't be related to contract or state or federal law. We can vote to suspend policy for a period of time. And again, it'll be, as they come up, we'll know whether to suspend or if we need to change it. So I don't know, Lee, if that addresses the concern you raised earlier.
Yeah, I think that I just imagine that a lot of the policies will be those that are through mass general law or contract stuff. So I guess I was just wanting to ask Brooke, do you need anything suspended right now, or should we just do it as it comes? I know we have another meeting in a week. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
So first of all, thank you very much. I think that's really supportive. I think at this moment in time, I would say the answer is no right now. That doesn't mean that it won't happen or we won't come up against something, because we may well. But at this moment in time, the answer is no. I think we're okay. But honestly, that could change on a dime. So, but as I sit here tonight, the answer is no.
And if we need to just call a quick meeting, I mean,
I will.
We've done it before. We'll just bring everybody together. As long as we have 8, we can do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, I am going to hit my mute button and send it over to Brooke. A reminder: please write down your questions, and when Brooke is finished with her presentation, and when the members of her team have made their presentations, then I will recognize folks to ask their questions. We good? Okay.
Thank you, Kathy. So this is going to be long, so I'm going to let our school committee members know that now. And we've really tried to break it up so that it's kind of half tonight and the other half next Wednesday night. And we're not suggesting at all that we have all of the answers, because we don't. And we also all know that this could turn on a dime, and depending on any multiple number of factors that could be out there. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to kind of tee it up to say this is where we're at. This is how we got to be where we're at this evening. I know that Dr. McGuire there is a man without internet. I think, are you still without internet, Todd? So yes, so a lot of his work he'll be pulling, and I think Alita's got quite a bit of it. So we're hoping that he doesn't have to pull up anything else. But we want to talk about a little bit about the survey. We want to talk about the number of respondents that we had, the different types of surveys that we've done, the work that the different groups are doing. And Todd, I'm not sure if you're able to show our different groups, our working groups, but I just want to tee that up right now to make sure that if you don't have it, if you're able to send it over to Alita while I'm talking, that would be great. So I'm going to take a step back here. When we first finished the school year as such in June, we were informed at that point in time by the Commissioner of Education that about 80% to 90% of our school reopening would be prescribed by the state of Massachusetts, particularly the DESE. And we were informed at that point in time that we would probably be looking at initially we would be looking at a hybrid model, and that we could potentially go back and forth on that hybrid to either full remote or full return, depending on the data. And then somewhere along the way in the following weeks thereafter, the notion was actually we're going to push for a full return with safety precautions in place. And so that's really where our group started the work. We started to put the greatest amount of effort that we had in a return model with safety precautions, because that's what we were asked to do. So we did. And we had a lot of meetings, because we all meet very, very frequently. We all meet multiple times during the course of a week. So I felt that we were in a good place. And I want to say too, I don't think that any of the work that we have done is for nothing. It's not work done for naught, because I will not be surprised if we don't go through all three of the models that Kathy was just speaking of. The full remote, the full return, and the hybrid at some point in time this year. So I think that we're kind of geared up for that. So we had talked a lot and worked towards the full return. So weeks into that work, as I reflected on our district values, I did a lot of thinking about it. I reflected on our district improvement plan goals, and I did make some notes that I'm going to read from here. And I received a number of emails, as I always do, from our parents, just reflective emails, really good, reflective, constructive emails from our parents. And then I took a good look once a survey went out. And Todd, I'm just reflecting, I think it was about 2,600, 2,700 responses, I think, that we got back, or was it 28?
We're just under 2,800 responses.
Right, thanks.
Yep.
And I would say even the first night, even though we had the glitch, well, we didn't, School Messenger had the glitch on the Thursday night, we received 500 responses on Thursday night. And every one of those responses that we received, every one of the survey responses we received had comments. And they were constructive, and they were good things for us to take a look at. And I think that they certainly helped to shape some of my thinking as well. And as I read through that, and I reflected on our district values and our district improvement plans, our work with SEL, I started to think differently. And I think that during my leadership time at Neshoba Regional School District, we've always asked, at the forefront of all of our thinking, what's the best decision we can make for our children? And that always drives our work. And followed closely behind that question is, what's in the best interest of our staff? And so I reflected on those being linchpin questions for us that everything else evolved around. And I reflected on our work over the last 4 years, particularly with safety, because we've done yeoman's work in terms of safety. And I took a look at that, and I took a look at the guidelines that we were expected to abide by to bring everything back to full return. And I just found myself struggling with the notion of a full return. And I found that personally, professionally, philosophically, I struggled with things. I struggled with the 3-foot distance piece. And we had an email that a father sent in to me, and he said the same kind of thing. If we don't work at the minimum with Neshoba, why are we considering the 3-foot distance minimum as the mark for us to work from? And I couldn't agree more. So with having said that, I think Neshoba doesn't set the bar at the minimum. And so I think that we had to think a little bit differently. I think given the spatial, the other restrictions required for full in-person teaching, I think our administrative team found ourselves moving away from the full return model and moving towards a hybrid model. We believe that a hybrid model can allow us to align the educational experience with our district core values. Our teachers and our students need to connect. And if you think about when we left in March, our teachers and our students were already connected. They knew each other. They'd already had months together. When we go back in September, we're going to have children who go into buildings that they, for all intents and purposes, they've never been in for any type of instruction. You look at our freshmen going in, or, you know, and you say, they need to get in there. I don't know that they need to be in there for full return, but we have to have that time and that connection with their teachers to establish something in case we end up going to a full remote again sometime in the near future, maybe months out, maybe a year out. I have no idea, but I think a hybrid model needs to be where we need to start. Those relationships are so critical. I think when we look just at the logistics of all of this, I think that was the other thing. Rob and his team and worked closely with our principals, and I know all of our principals are online tonight. And so at the end, if we have questions of them, we'll certainly feel free to ask them. But they worked diligently at the classrooms, and they laid everything out. What could these classrooms look like? And we could, in essence, at the 3-foot mark, get everybody in there, and we could box that teacher into that 6-foot mark at the front of the classroom. But then there wasn't really room to move. There was no wiggle room in it. If we go back to a hybrid model, then that allows us to have more space and more distance, and our teachers can move about more freely. And I feel much more comfortable with that. Another thing that we reflected lots on, and I know that Tom is going to talk tonight about food services, but that was also going to be problematic for us, is how we were going to feed all of these children. And I know that initially the commissioner wanted all of us to feed all of our children in the classrooms, but that proved to be almost a totally impossible task. And especially if you think, again, just the common sense bar that would say they can't eat at the 3-foot mark. We could get our students into the classroom, but they can't eat at the 3-foot mark. They need to eat at the 6-foot mark. So they can't be in the classrooms anyway. So we just found, as we started to go through all of this, that so much of it was not adding up. And then we added the bus runs in. And I know that Michelle Cody's here tonight, and she's going to speak to you a little bit about the bus runs. On a 76 passenger bus or 77 passenger bus, we could only get 25 or 26 kids onto that bus, which meant that we would be doing probably triple runs for a number of our buses, not just the 77 passengers, but the smaller passengers obviously have smaller, groups that they could get on them too. So we were looking potentially at 3 runs for a number of our single runs. Then we started looking at the logistics of, well, what does that look like for our start times? And it just proved to be this mammoth undertaking that we just could not find our way through. And we didn't necessarily agree with that. So I think the other thing that I would want to put out there is I still remain concerned about the overall experience for our children. And I know I've mentioned that at probably just about every single administrative meeting that we've had. This is not normal. None of this is going to be normal for our children. And I know Rob and I know Rob's on the call too, and I'm not asking Rob that you speak to this, but we continue to look for, and I know he and Lisa have tried out different masks that have the clear, so that our kids, especially our youngest kids, can see the faces of our teachers, that can see the smiles. And, so far we haven't found a mask that's comfortable. They make them, but if you're going to wear them all day, they have to be comfortable too. And we haven't found the right one. Now, today we were hoping that we found a company that can get them for us, but we're not sure if those are going to be comfortable either. So we're continually looking for these kinds of things. But I worry about that. And I think that with a hybrid model, I know it's not going to be normal, because nothing about this is normal. But I feel like it'll be a better educational experience for our children than remaining at the 3-foot mark. Nobody can move. And I just don't think it's going to be good for us. So I called our administrative team together after thinking through all of this. And we decided as a collective group that we would shift our energies towards a hybrid model. Now, we anticipated the possibility that we're going to have to cycle through all of these. We took a look at different models. We took a look at the data that came on our surveys. And I think that we see this as a phased-in approach, no different than the governor has set up phased-in approaches for everything, right? I mean, not everybody went from like total remote to a total opening of everything. You know, there was that phased in approach, and I think that we see the hybrid model as being a phased in approach. And in our case, we'll be able to phase and toggle back and forth whether we have to phase into full remote or phase in, hopefully ultimately phase in this year to a full return. I think that it's not ideal, but I think it's the right thing for us to do right now. And I think one of the other things that continue to come up in the survey data points too from parents is, please follow the science, please follow the data, please don't follow the politicians. That came up over and over again. And I think that that's who our administrative team is. I think we do follow the science, we do follow the data. And I think we're not comfortable with the 3-foot distancing. We feel much more comfortable with more than 3 feet and ideally 6 feet. Working with this, and I know Rob and Tom will talk, for example, some of the things that we've thought about for food services and such to try to keep everybody safe. At the end of all of this, it has to be about keeping our children, our staff, and beyond safe, because this isn't just about the children in the building, and it's not just about the adults in the building. It's who the adults go home to, it's who the children go home, it's about our communities. So I think that we feel comfortable, and you're going to hear from a number of our folks tonight as we work through this and try to make sure that we put every possible safety measure we can in place. With that, we're going to kind of start to talk it through, and now I see Todd is off the video, so I'm not sure if he's, oh, there he is. Okay. So I think, Todd, we're going to start in with your efforts, and Alita, I believe you've got the slide deck. So let's start talking through the thinking and the various departments and the work that's being done right now. So Todd,
Brooke, did you want to talk first about the structural plan and the task forces as you mentioned a few minutes ago?
Yes, I would like that, please. Yeah.
Sure. So on the front web page, so we have created a new tab on the web page that is now dedicated to fall reopening. It still also has all of the COVID-19 resources that were associated with health and wellness on there, but we certainly wanted to dedicate now a page that's tied to the reopening for our fall. In our last meeting, we did review this document that is our kind of our structural plan, and we identified that the several goals about reopening and implementing learning plans that are allowing for in-class, remote, and hybrid learning models. And then we've developed a district steering committee. From there, we've developed 4 focus areas.
Can you just leave that for a second, Todd? Let me just speak to that for a second, please.
Alita is doing the sharing of the screen tonight.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry to jump in. So one of the things that was important to us on this particular steering committee was to make sure that we had parents that represented our 3 communities and the grade grouping levels. So we have parents that represent elementary, middle, and high school, and we have parents that represent each of our 3 communities on there. We also have Kevin Keaveney, who of course is our union president, and of course is a teacher, and Mike Tolson, who's a teacher, and who is also a union representative at the high school. And then of course you see our members on there, our staff members, union, our leadership, and Elaine Sanfilippo is the school committee member on that committee that represents the school committee. Sorry, Todd, thank you.
That's okay. And we identified our 4 focus areas in the last time as well, and you'll see the specific issues and themes under those areas as it relates to busing facilities operations, the teaching and learning department, social emotional learning, the health and safety and human resources department, as well as our extended learning program, childcare and nutrition. The individuals in those particular areas are listed underneath of those specific areas. We also consider people personnel services and special education as well to weave throughout all of those areas. And so we've added a pretty significant portion of the special education considerations for fall of 2020 under there as well in our work with Joan DeAngelis and the work that she does with all of us. You can keep going, Alita. And those are the teams and those those 4 areas. And then what we did was our principals worked with our principals, and they worked within their school, buildings to develop pretty robust, large task force teams within their buildings to include several teachers, administrators, school council members, parents, etc., so that at the building level we could really start looking at what do these models look like at the building level. What does a remote learning model look at the building level, as well as a hybrid model, or even if we were to return full in the classroom. So that can be found right on the district webpage. It is also in our fall reopening tab, as well as our structure for reopening with all of the individuals on those multiple task forces.
Kathy, can I ask a question?
Kathy, you're muted. Kathy, you're muted. Kathy, you're muted. Can you, yeah, sorry. There.
Yeah, I'd really like everyone to wait till the end. I myself am writing down my questions as they come up. Thank you, Leah.
Okay, Todd, thank you. And I want to make sure that people, Alita, could you just pull up again, scroll up a little bit so that parents have an opportunity. I know that there are some parents out there tonight that are watching that. I think that they would like to see who's on their school school task force. Can you just scroll and just give it a minute here for folks to look at? Thank you. So there's Mary Rowlandson with the Burbank. Right, thanks. Can you scroll down? Thank you. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Todd, do we still have you on?
Do you want to move to the survey now?
Yes, and we can. And actually, one of the things that Todd, I think we want to make sure too, is I don't think we've got listed our school committee members on there, and we need to make sure that our school committee members are listed as well. And I can see that that's not on there, so we'll do that. We'll make sure that ad is on there too in the next couple of days.
I didn't see any Stowe schools listed.
There.
No, okay.
They should be all the way down the bottom.
Yeah, she didn't go all the way to the bottom. Okay, Todd, do you want to continue, please?
So we're going to bring up the survey data.
Todd, are you doing that or is Alita?
Alita's pulling everything up, Brooke, because I don't have internet.
I just
I'm
wanted
on
to
my
make sure.
phone,
There it
as
is.
you
Okay,
indicated.
thank you.
Thanks.
There we go.
So we put together a slide deck for the fall reopening survey data. And the first few slides are going to indicate responses from our families. We had just under 2,800 responses from our families in a survey that was out for about a week's time. The goal for this survey was simply to kind of do a deep dive on where families are currently at as it related to full remote learning, hybrid model learning, and or full in-person learning and what they were thinking of doing. So you can move forward to screens. There you go. So this first graph, the question was, if the district moves forward with 100% in-person learning model, please indicate your family's intention right now with the model. And so just about 60% of families would send their child to school if we were 100% in person. That's 60% how they were feeling right now in the middle of July.
And I think it's really important because I know a number of parents reached back out to me and said, is this binding? And we said, absolutely not. I said to one parent, you'll probably change your mind 3 or 4 times over between now and September. And we know that, and we understand and we respect that. But we needed some starting points, and that's what this data provided for us. Thanks, Todd.
Yep. You'll see close to, well over 25% were still undecided. And then you have almost 13% saying they would not send their child to school and would opt for a full NRSD remote learning model. And we were very specific about that to say, would you opt for a Neshoba remote learning model?
Yeah, I just want to speak to that for a moment too, because I think it's important that people understand that the state asked us to do the 3, exactly as Kathy had said initially, to basically provide them with 3 models of what it might look like for our school districts at the end of July. So, and again, that was the full remote, the full return, and the hybrid. But it also asked us to do thinking on full remote. And so that's why Todd is being very specific when he's talking about an NRSD full remote. So we basically have to build that as well.
Right. So we can move to the next slide. The next question asked, if the district was not able to implement a 100% in-person learning model, that's full back in classroom for everybody, the district may move forward with the implementation of a hybrid model, which identifies 50% of students in school on a given day. You see over 75% of respondents would have their child participate in that hybrid model. For 16% were undecided, and the rest indicated that they would not have their child participate in a hybrid model and would opt for a full NRSD remote learning model. Again, they would opt for a Neshoba remote learning model. So with that information, we do recognize that, we also need to create a robust remote learning model for those students and families who will opt for that option, even if we go hybrid, or if we were to go full in person. So we know that we need to create that, and we are certainly currently working on that. We did meet with the commissioner today, and with specific guidance, they are providing a specific guidance next week for what a full remote learning model should look like, as well as providing us some resources. I think we felt really good about that today, Brooke.
Absolutely. I think the other thing too, and this question has come up a lot, people ask, well, will there be grading next time? And the short answer is yes. I just want to go back for half a minute on this. I think what's really important for us to remember is that when we went out on March 13th, I don't think any of us ever thought we would still be here right now. I don't think any of us did. And I don't want to say this, the poor teachers, but in part the poor teachers that basically had to learn to try to teach remotely, and for a lot of them, that was not a natural thing for them to do. Like, you think about grade 2 teachers or grade 1 teachers, the remote learning is not something that would come naturally, because that's not what you're used to doing. And in essence, they were given 4 days between the DES guidance that changed from keep curiosity alive to, well, now we're going to go into remote learning. So I think the positive thing for us now is we've received so much great feedback from the earlier surveys, not this one, but earlier surveys that talked about what were challenges that you found for both our teachers and our parents. And so I think that our teaching and learning unit with our principals is really combing through that, and I think that will really help to guide us. And so we've got some time now to build this remote learning model, whereas going into the March, we literally had 4 days in that time period to do it. I think people are better adjusted. I think there are some newer platforms out there that we'll look at, but grading was another one of those things, and it's almost even too complicated to explain, but there were reasons why the state had to go to that. That wasn't a district-wide thing. That was a statewide thing, and that was really linked to federal regulations, not even state regulations. So it wasn't something that any of us necessarily wanted to do. When I take a look at the teacher surveys that we've been getting in, one of the big things that they continue to say is, as we move forward with this remote learning, we need to be grading. And we've said that all along, and the commissioner said that too. So you're going to see a very different model with remote learning as we move forward. Thanks, Todd.
Yep. So the next slide got a little bit more specific and wanted to ask in terms of hybrid models, because as you can imagine, school districts all over Massachusetts are thinking of a variety of models that includes in-person as well as at-home remote learning and what that might look like. And you have to take into consideration sizes of your buildings, you have to take in consideration schedules, you have to take into consideration transportation, et cetera. And so as we began to think about what those might look like and fit in our district, we asked the question, if you indicated that you would have your child participate in a hybrid model, please review the potential options below and select your preference for your child. There were 3 options that we put out there. One was a hybrid option, the first hybrid option, which was a full week rotation. 2 cohorts, A and B, cohort A coming in for 1 full week, and then cohort B coming in the next week and alternating. The second hybrid option, option 2, was a split week rotation with cohorts A and B with alternating weeks. And then the third hybrid option was a split week non-rotating A and B cohort, which would have cohort A coming in on Mondays and Tuesdays, and cohort B coming in on Thursdays and Fridays, with Wednesday being an all remote day for all students.
Yeah, I think the other thing, I'm sorry, the other thing.
I was just going to say, you can see from the responses that that's pretty evenly split across the district from families.
And I think that this is also one of the reasons, and I know I've brought this up before, I think at both previous school committee meetings, you can see why we needed to move to a 5-day cycle with our schools. And so our middle and elementary schools have always been on a 6-day cycle. Our high school has been on an 8-day cycle. And so you can see the rationale for moving to a 5-day cycle. And I think the other thing that we would want to say is we are in constant contact with our neighboring communities. I have a standing meeting every Monday with a large group of superintendents. And this is above and beyond, like at the meetings we had today that had over 500 people. We have those just about weekly as well. Todd has ongoing meetings. We have a Friday meeting with a large group of assistant superintendents. So we're constantly touching base with folks and asking, what are you doing with this or that or whatever. And most of the schools in our area regionally, wherever we can do things together, we are trying to. And one of those things is the 5-day cycle. I had a parent reach out the other day and ask, well, what is a 5-day cycle? It's just as simple as a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's all it is. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. So we can go to the next slide. And this is where we asked about transportation, because obviously transportation is a huge consideration when we are trying to follow CDC guidelines as it relates to distancing for students, as it relates to ventilation on buses. We certainly were briefed and got some very specific guidance on transportation today from the commissioner and the department, which we were thrilled about. So we're going to be able to add those specifics to our comprehensive plan. So that was good news. But we certainly wanted to be able to identify how parents and families would be getting their child to school and how they would also be getting them, home from school. So we asked people to indicate their current plans for the child for transportation to school. And you'll see just over 40% indicated the school bus, but not far behind that was to be dropping students off by car, and or their child drives him or herself to school. So, this kind of data informs us not only of the kinds of populations, the number of students who would be on our buses and how many runs we might have to do for our transportation, but it also informs us in terms of traffic. If 40% of students are going to be driven to school, what does that look like in terms of traffic patterns and time on learning as it relates to the school day? Because we recognize that transportation was a kind of a huge barrier in front of us moving forward in terms of creating a reopening plan, because we need to make sure that kids are getting in a timely fashion. And if we can only fit a third of students as regularly fit on a school bus, that's certainly going to take more time out of the day. So this was some information that was very informative for us as we move forward in our planning. We good, Brooke? Did you want to?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay. So those were the components that we asked for our families. So we currently have a faculty feedback scenario going on right now. That would be the next slide, Alita. That survey has not yet closed, but I just wanted to take a snapshot of that data for you. And it's just the one question, because we wanted to kind of match up the desire of hybrid models from our faculty, matching that with our families. We asked them, should there be a hybrid return to school in the fall? Please review the potential options below and select a preference for which you believe is in the best interest of students. The same three models, the full week alternating A and B cohorts, cohort A in for 1 week and then cohort B in for the next week. Hybrid option 2, the split week rotation, and hybrid option 3, that cohort A in on Mondays and Tuesdays, everybody remote on Wednesdays, and then cohort B in on Thursdays and Fridays. And right now, the faculty is choosing the third option, option 3. About close to 50% of the faculty is opting for that hybrid option. And that was that last slide in that slide deck, Alita. I don't know if you were able to toggle through.
And just, while she's looking to see if she's got that or not, the high school union also did their own survey to help inform us as well. They also did a similar thing to us, and the high school staff also supported the model 3 by a little, just over 50%. Okay, if we can't get the slide, that's fine.
Okay. We can put it in the materials, certainly. The other thing we were able to do as well with the family surveys is that we did also work to disaggregate the data by grade level. So we're able to take a look at by grade level, the information and all of the data at every single level to give some information to our elementary schools, middle and high schools. So myself, I worked with Cindy Larson, our Director of Digital Learning, who's still continuing to work with us this summer. So we have that data available, and I'm happy to share it with the school committee after the meeting tonight. I think that that's valuable information that we were really able to drill down on. So that's it for survey data. And there's that last slide there where you can see more faculty were opting for that hybrid option 3 model, with the 2 days in for cohort A, Wednesday full remote for everybody, and then cohort B coming in on Thursdays and Fridays. And some of the thinking around that was that allows every student to be getting in the building every week and not having necessarily that lapse of connection, that lapse of established connections with peers in their classroom if they were to have to be in for a week and then wait a week plus 2 weekends to get back into the building. Option 3 was allowing every student across the district to be in the buildings every week.
Right, thanks, Todd.
Yep, you're welcome.
So I think, Todd, we'll move into the next slide deck if we can.
Okay.
If Alita can tee that up for us, please. And so we've asked some of our leadership tonight. We've kind of split it in half. So half will report out tonight, half will report out next meeting. And it's just basically in their areas to kind of let you know what they've done very specifically to the situation that we find ourselves in and as we move forward. So it's not a general update, it's really an update just specific to this. So Todd, do you want to start teeing it up? Because I know that you're first.
Sure. So teaching and learning is first. And so our curriculum coordinator for the district, Martina Kenyon, is joining us tonight. So she'll chime in after I give kind of an update, and she can certainly do a deeper dive as well. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, the teaching and learning process. It's one of the main 4 focus areas of our comprehensive learning plan. And as you'll recall, early in the year, we were certainly asking, to help us reimagine our teaching and learning team. And I'm really happy with the way in which we have done that. This team is fantastic. Joining me is Martina. We've got Kim Early, who is overseeing our humanities programming, K through 12. We've brought in Karen Boisvert, who is overseeing our math programming, K through 12. So I've got 2 leaders in 2 major disciplines across the district that are leading that charge. Cindy Larson, who is still hanging with us this summer and helping out with digital learning. And then we've also brought in Christy Nealon, our assistant principal from Center School, and Caitlin Angulo from Florence Sawyer School. And they're helping us with our social emotional learning processes with this, as well as our social equity and justice component. And it's just been a tremendous team effort thus far. The work that we've been doing since school ended has just been fantastic. We've been able to kind of divide and conquer, work with our principals, work with our other departments, and really set the goals moving forward for our fall reopening plan. I identified those goals there, and we're also working with Jacob Foster, as you know, who's working with our high school on our MSBA educational visioning program. But he wanted to join us too, because this certainly relates to that work. And so we have had the good fortune to have him join our team throughout the summer thus far. So a shout out to Jake, because he's just a great guy to bounce things off us, and he gives us some great ideas and some great thinking moving forward. So those goals are including the supporting the safety, health, and well-being of our students and staff, establishing and rebuilding connections among our staff and students. And that was really important, because when we left in March, we already had connections that were built. So even in a remote learning model, those teachers knew those students. We recognize that moving forward in the fall, we really are going to have to focus on what establishing those connections look like. New teachers with new students, new groupings of students. And we recognize that that's really, really important, whatever model that we're in. We want to engage in active student-centered learning experiences. And there's a real push on fostering joy and learning, because we really are working on that social emotional impact on kids as well as our faculty. So
And I think
yep.
So if I can speak, thank you. I think that fostering joy in learning, and we've talked about that a lot, and I know I've talked to Kevin Keaveney about it as well. I think that that's just so important to us, and I think that we really felt that if we did the full-on return for having all children, we felt that particular component would really suffer. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thanks, Todd.
Sure. So I mentioned in an earlier meeting, and everyone is aware that the CARES Act came out and allowed districts to apply for monies for the COVID relief. I indicated that Neshoba was eligible for just $215,000 to support initiatives moving forward. We were approved for that money, and so we were able to identify very specific places where we would put that money. And we've already started to do that. Shout out to Suchi and his tech team. We already have 192 Chromebooks in district already to help support our 3 through 5 learners. This means that every student in grades 3 through 12 will have a device. So should we have to go full remote, in our hybrid models, every student in grades 3 through 12 can be equipped with his or her own Chromebook. We certainly will have our loaner program as well for those families who may need one, or those who is damaged and needs to be fixed. But that was tremendous to move us forward and to move our elementary students forward with technology. We've been able to purchase synchronous and asynchronous online platforms, our Google Meet platforms, our Screencastify platforms that allow for the taping of lessons, the creating of lessons, the flipped classroom, as well as two-way communications between teachers and students, as well as multiple resources that are going to help not only the teaching and learning in the classroom, but professional development for our teachers prior to the start of school. We were really happy to hear the commissioner talk about really wanting to give us some professional development days prior to the start of school to make sure that teachers are equipped to really work in a remote hybrid model.
Can I speak to that? Just 2 things here, Todd. Thank you. So one of the things I think that, we're relatively discreet in this area, but we knew that there were families that needed some extra support along the way when we went into closure. And some of them reached out to us and we were sure to take care of them. Others, we reached out to them. Some of our principals reached out to folks that we hadn't heard from or that we just needed to do a double check on because what they might not have had access to a Chromebook or whatever it was. So I do want it out there that we did our level best to make sure. I know that sometimes chief staff came in and there was like an exchange in the front of the Emerson wing on a table at the front of the building as parents came and picked it up or what have you. So I too want to thank Chief's team for everything that they did. So I know that sometimes people have asked, well, what about these kids that didn't have them? And I would say that we did our level best to make sure that we got everybody who needed one to be able to use. This, the other thing I want to mention too, we are not, I just want to stress what Dr. McGuire just said. This does not mean we are going 1-to-1 for grades 3 to 12, because that's a mammoth undertaking and that's not where we're at. We were able to purchase this just in case we end up, because I think many of us think that we will probably end up back in a full remote cycle at some point in time, and this will give those students that opportunity to have it automatically. The other thing that Dr. McGuire just mentioned, and I'm going to chime in on, and I'm going to go down two roads here. We have asked, we very specifically asked as a school district of the commissioner to reflect on the fact that we would very much were in favor of having more time up front for our teachers for professional development. Basically building on the idea of what I had said earlier, that when we went into this, there were just really a couple of days for our people to basically pull all things together and move the district into a remote cycle that we honestly, we were in some ways prepared and in other ways completely not prepared. So we were hopeful that the commissioner would look and rather than doing the 180 days, go to at least 177 or potentially 175. And the news that we heard today, although it doesn't sound like it's quite solidified, is that he is definitely looking at doing 177 or 175. I think he's hoping to go to 175 too, depending on whatever other T's he has to cross and the I's that he needs to dot right now. So we are very appreciative. We certainly weren't the only school district that was asking that. A lot of school districts were asking that, but certainly we were as well as the Neshoba Regional School District. Thanks, John.
So with that information, it's really going to allow the teaching and learning team to really start thinking about what that kind of professional development prior to the start of school looks like. The survey data certainly is going to inform us on what teachers need, and we'll continue to reach out to make sure that they feel equipped to meet all students' needs come the fall. So with all of this, we have been able to start our comprehensive plan, and our comprehensive plan is going to be required to include the 3 models of learning, which includes in-person, remote, and hybrid. So in our comprehensive plan, and we're also creating a kind of a 6 to 7 page overview for everyone that kind of puts it, trying to truncates all of it. But we're defining what those are, and then we'll be identifying what models we will be using. And we'll be using survey data from families, faculty, and staff that I just highlighted for you. And our focus really is going to also be on blended learning, social emotional learning, and the social and racial equity and justice resources that I mentioned earlier. Based on survey data from parents and families as well as faculty, we have a strong focus on two-way communication. We recognize that that's something that's absolutely essential. We worked very hard on that in the spring to make sure that the students and teachers were communicating in a safe, protected, secure environment. We continue to secure that and find ways to do that. And then we're going to continue to work on our professional development to really support synchronous learning. That is also another major focus for us, so that we can make sure that kids are getting live instruction if they are at home. So that's kind of my overview. I will pass it over to Martina if she'd like to add some more specifics, because she tends to get very much in the trenches with our teachers and our staff. So if there's anything that I didn't highlight and she wants to highlight, I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thanks, Dr. McGuire. Hi,
You're welcome.
everybody. I just wanted to add one small piece of information around professional development for teachers that we know that teachers, even in the summer, tend to want to sort of build their capacity. So right now, our planning has been focusing on sort of a two-pronged effort, some options for teachers if they want to engage in some summer learning in August, and then some in-district options, however those end up getting organized before the students come back right before the fall. So we're really excited to hear that there'll be additional time. We've been really hoping for that so that we can offer time for teachers to participate in professional learning and also collaborate to start the school year.
Thanks, Martina. I think just a couple of other quick things here too. We are in the process of developing a larger, almost like a booklet, I guess, Todd, I don't know what else to call it, that will ultimately go out to all of our families. So it's not like we're looking at this and saying we expect people to take notes on this or anything like that. That's not the case at all. But we also know that there will still be changes between now and the start of the school year. But for example, there are some hints here that we're looking for folks to pick up, and we will also be sending a memo out within the next couple of days to our parents, updating them. And so if you think about what we just said about the 177 and 175 days, that means that in all likelihood, our students as such would not start their school year until after the Labor Day weekend. So we don't have a precise date yet. We're still waiting the commissioner on that. And as soon as we have that, we of course will let our families know. So know that there's a little booklet that will follow at some point in time. There will be just a general memo that goes out in the next couple of days. And know that we'll be starting a little bit later than we had anticipated for students. Thanks, Todd. Okay, I think, Todd, that's it for your slide, am I right?
That would be it for my team, unless Martina has anything else to add.
No, it doesn't sound like it. So
okay.
Thanks, Martina. Thank you, Todd. So we'll go to the next slide then, Alita, please. And Todd, feel free to jump in. I know that you and I have been working with all of these units, so if we miss anything. So technology. So Chi, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Okay. Hi, my name is Su Chi. I oversee the technology operation for the district. So the shutdown and also all this the COVID-19 this situation definitely changed our focus for the summer. On top of our regular summer task, at least a couple of things here kind of focus on how to deal with the situation and also plan for the fall opening. So we continue with the budget approval, continue with a one-to-one deployment for 6th and 9th grade. So the one-to-one program has been proven very beneficial for the district, especially during time like this. It gave like individual attention and student can have their own device. On top of the regular middle school and high school deployment, getting the additional like grant money, we were able to acquire like almost 200 Chromebooks for the elementary school. We also purchased, we also upgrade all the classroom iPad. So the current iPad in classroom are kind of old and also doesn't have enough storage. And a lot of application, the latest application cannot run just because of hardware limitation. So with approved budget, we were able to upgrade all the classroom iPad, and that will be very, very helpful when school start. So we continue with the teacher laptop and some of the lab machine upgrade. One thing unique we did compared to previous years is we're getting some portable projectors just to deal with this uncertainty of like what kind of a setup is when school start. When I talk with the principals, I think there's a strong desire like to create some kind of flexibility. I think there's a potential need to set up some kind of a temporary either classrooms or learning space in some non-conventional space. So having a portable projector available will give them a lot of flexibility. Say like you can set up a temporary classroom either in the gym, in the cafeteria, or things like this. So that is something unique we did this summer. And also right now, like since March, we did a lot of remote learning. And one thing we realized we need to do is need to migrate a lot of the internal applications to the cloud. Just give like a teacher, student, even parents some better and faster access. One key application we did migrate to the cloud is the internal library server. Before, like that is on premises, it's hosted internally in the high school. Right now, we're gonna move that one into the cloud. So not only for the teacher, student, also all the parents, they can log in there. I think they will have a much better, quicker access to that to search for the record, to borrow books, for that kind of thing. One thing we work with teaching learning is we try to set up this auto-rusting single sign-on using the data in PowerSchool to tie it up with a lot of new applications they are doing. So this kind of streamline the process, meaning every time like they have a new program, we don't need to like create separate user account for teacher student. It just automatically extract data from PowerSchool and set up based on the existing like classroom setup. Like the teacher can see their own kids. They don't need to create something separate. That will be very helpful for the school start. Also to meet with the current need for this online conferencing, we did a lot of testing for the like Google Meet, for the Zoom, and also optimize the network traffic to support those kind of solutions. And another unique thing we did is when talking to the principal about all this rescheduling, especially for high school, we decided to rebuild all the image for the current computer labs. Before, not all labs has a lot of programs because of the license limitation and also the hardware limitation. By talking with Steve, we realized for them to cut back, switch from 8-day schedule to 5-day schedule, they really need to make it flexible so they can like schedule class in all labs whenever the space or time is possible. So we are going through all the programs and all the labs, doing a lot of testing, make sure each lab has a maximum program possible. I think that is something will help them a lot. So those are kind of the few things like we did try to address a unique situation we're facing now.
Great, thanks, Jay. And I think it's really important that we note that our team is highlighting some of the key things. We're not highlighting every single thing that's being done. We're just highlighting the key salient points.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate that. To our next slide then, Alita. Thanks. So we're going to turn it over to Anne Marie.
Thank you. Let's see, the HR issues, of course, with the reopening are going to vary depending on which mode of opening we end up with, but there are some things that will be consistent no matter what, the basics. One of the things we've done is we've started a remote onboarding process for while our office has been closed, and we will continue it going forward to cut down on the foot traffic in our office, so that we have an online platform for our pre-employment paperwork. So our new hires, instead of coming in and doing all that, they're doing it online. Our first cohort of new hires is in the thick of that now, and we're using them to get the kinks out of the system so that we won't have people walking through the offices for that. There are going to be some training needs on the reopening that will be in addition to what Lisa provides for the health and safety type issues, but the district has got a new obligation to affirmatively take actions to reduce the risk of discrimination and harassment based on two things. One is national origin. The thinking there is that harassment and discrimination based on a person national origin is being perhaps a COVID hotspot. The second is harassment or discrimination against a coworker who themselves or is associated with someone who has been or is perceived to have been a COVID patient. And our administrators are going to be trained to be able to recognize this and root it out so that everybody feels comfortable from that standpoint at work. We're going to need to do training for our substitute teachers so that when we have substitute teachers in, we know that our substitute teachers are very familiar with the procedures and the protocols that they have to do to make sure that our children and our staff members are safe. make sure they're completely up to speed. And we're also mindful of the potential need for more substitute teachers. And so we're having discussions about substitutes. A big category is requests for leaves or accommodations. Those will be done using our existing processes. As always, if we've got an employee who has got a medical condition or a disability, and they think that they need an accommodation in order to be able to perform their job, they always have the right to come forward and to request that accommodation, and that won't change. They will still have that right. Similarly, for Family and Medical Leave Act, you've probably heard FMLA. Our employees have got the right to request FMLA leave if for their own serious health condition, or for the serious health condition of a family member, or for the birth or adoption of a child. That's not changed, and that will still be done through our office using the same process that we always have. Also, our employees have got contractual leave. You know, they've got sick leave, they've got the right to request a leave of absence, all those things that they get by virtue of the fact that they're members of Unit A or Unit C, all those will stay the same. There are a couple of additional avenues that are COVID related. You might have heard of the FFCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act. That's in two parts, and it offers some limited partial relief for people who have got either daycare issues or who are quarantined, who are caring for someone who's quarantined. There are 6 or 7 categories, people that can be helped by these at the FFCRA. It's not full relief, but it's partial, and it's limited to the people who qualify under the rather complicated statute. That's of course also done through our office, those requests. And that, unless it's extended, the FFCRA protections, those 2 parts, will be expiring on December 31st. The last thing about that is is something that we're still working through, and something that will still require some determination and some discussion. That's like the risky behavior scenario. You know, the one that's always put forward is if you've got an employee who asks for a week off and they go to Disney World, oh, how wonderful. And then they come back and they need to quarantine for 2 weeks. You know, what happens if they go to a big party where people aren't protected? How we're going to protect our employees and that employee, you know, then that still needs to be worked out. Beyond those, we've got, just like we do any year, it's always busy this time of year in our office. We will have our new employee orientation. We've got right now about 20 or 25 new teachers to start our year. Our mentor program will be yet again with Karen Mayotte and Kim Rocha. There'll be some changes to that program that not necessarily virus related, but some changes in that. But we'll be looking to see what that program is going to look like, as we would any year. And lastly, we're going to have 11 teachers this year who are attaining the big deal career milestone of professional teacher status. This is a big deal. This means that it's like the more familiar concept of tenure. This is really something to be celebrated. And just because, you know, the world is in a pandemic, we don't want those 11 teachers to have this big milestone pass unrecognized and uncelebrated. So we're going to want to make sure that that stays on our list every single time to make sure that the teachers who get professional teacher status this year are recognized for that, because that's huge. That's really huge. We don't want to, that's a joyous occasion that we don't want to let slip. So there we go. The principles, safety will be first and equity will be next. And there we go.
Thanks, Anne Marie. So I just want to mention a couple of quick things here too. I would want people to know that we are regularly attending, both Anne Marie and I are regularly attending legal seminars, which of course are all webinars now. Any changes that are being made to any of this kind of thing, we and I know people from your office are attending those to keep us current. The other thing too, now, Anne Marie, I know that you weren't on the commissioner call today, but Brian Devine did an outstanding job today, just talking through license. Yes, of course he did. He's awesome. Just talking through licensure, and they're definitely going to give us a lot of latitude, which is going to be amazing. I know you and I had a call earlier today as we were talking through the substitute teacher potential issues that we see ahead of us. And certainly it looks that the DESE is well aware of that, because this was a substitute teachers was a topic today with the commissioner. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we're going to see some latitude in the license here in a couple of different places. So I'm sure that you will get some sort of information here hot off the press within the next day or so.
Although we're very proud to say that of the 2025 teachers that we've hired so far, every single one has been fully credentialed. We haven't had any need for waivers just yet.
For waivers,
I think that's a testament to the Neshoba reputation, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Anne Marie. Alita, can we go to the next slide, please? Business office and Pat.
Hi, my name is Pat Mahoney, and I'm the business manager for the district. And I just want to give you kind of an overview of what goes on in the business office during the summer anyway. This is a very busy time of year for us normally. We close the books and open the books and reconcile everything and report to the state on what we spent. In addition to that, with the COVID-19 virus, we've had to change the way we do things a little bit. We've had to identify available funds within the budget to support the need for PPEs, health protection devices, facility adaptation, software, and technology. We provided principals and the other administrative staff with procurement assistance for these goods and services. There's a specific way that you need to procure goods and services, that are over a certain threshold. And in the case of buying some of these things, they exceed the threshold. So we need to be mindful of that. We've also, I've been looking into grant procurement. There are several grants out there available. Dr. McGuire made mention of the ESSER grant that he himself was the administrator of, accumulated all the data needed for that. But in addition to that, in the business office, we provide the guidance for other grants like MEMA and FEMA and anything else that's coming up in the near future for that assistance. As Superintendent Clenchey mentioned, that there is some relief coming through in the CARES Act, and we'll be handling that as well. Also, we have been keeping up to date with communication with DESE, and that's the Department of Education, and in regards to use of funds, procurement of supplies, payments for services, and state funding for the budget, multiple weekly meetings via Zoom. Mm-hmm. Just like Superintendent has her weekly Monday meeting, I usually have one on Tuesdays with Jay Sullivan, who is the finance person for the Department of Education. So that's about it.
Great, thanks, Pat. And just so that you know, Pat, too, the commissioner did allude again today to the fact that they are hoping that they will know next week if there are additional funds available to us. And Bill Bell, the CFO for DESE, mentioned again today that there are absolutely no updates right now on budget, and again, not expecting anything until September or October. So nothing new on that front, and absolutely nothing new on circuit breaker. So that was today. Thanks, Pat.
You're welcome.
Alita, can you, next slide, thank you. So Michelle, who actually works with Pat in Pat's office. And so Michelle's gonna go through and just give a general update about regular education transportation as it sits today.
So hi everybody, I'm Michelle Cody. I work in the business office with Pat and assist with the budget, and I'm also the transportation coordinator. One of the good things that happened because of the remote learning situation is our dispatcher, who was in our 4th year working for the district, so she's very in tune to the needs of the district and all of the routing systems. So she was able to take a deep dive into the routes a lot earlier than she would have typically. So she has been able to, really fine tune a lot of the routes that might have been a problem area before. So that being said, we've had a Zoom meeting with the executives and with the dispatcher for the district for D-Bus. And we sat down and talked about the different areas that we needed to focus on. The protocols will be that, masks will be required for the drivers and the students. D is also thinking about possibly putting a plexiglass behind the driver as an added safety situation for them, but that's not something that they've decided on yet. Everything is such a fluid situation. They will be increasing the sanitization of all the buses. At the end of last year, we had provided them with a lot of the sanitization products that we used. They are looking into purchasing those same ones, and they're compiling a schedule for an increased cleaning of all of the buses. So the last I had heard, the guidance was a 3-foot social distancing. They did actually measure the back of a bus seat to the one in front, and they decided that they didn't need to skip a row, and that was something that they, that was a big concern. So, but even that, with that being said, if we have no students that have siblings on the same route, that would be 26 students, 1 student per seat. If we're in the situation, especially with Florence Sawyer, where you've got K through 8 on the same bus, you could have 3 siblings all sharing a seat. So we'll have a much better increase of ridership on that particular route. Again, it depends on the hybrid model that we choose and to be able to determine how many students will be able to, fit on those buses. And if we are over 26 and we don't have any sibling sets, then we'll have to maybe shift some routes around to accommodate that. And when we were looking at the possibility of the full return, and I know Superintendent Clenchey mentioned this, there was no way that we'd be able to get all of the students back on one run, maybe even not even 2 runs. And we have some runs at this point that are upwards of close to an hour. So, and that's, we just, have a 29 buses total to work with. And the bus company does not have the ability to procure any additional buses. So we are always going to have to work with what we have available to us. And we have a 2-tiered system where we have the middle and the high schools have the first run, and then those same 29 buses go forward and do the elementary runs after. So we always have to be mindful of the time in between those routes as well.
Thanks, Michelle. I think just so you know too, on their commissioner call today, they actually did a bus diagram that I think you'll be getting tonight, and basically just staggered this, if you can imagine, like a zigzag, from seat to seat to seat type thing, from the front of the bus to the back. There'll be a visual that comes out tonight, and there is additional guidance that's coming out tonight, Michelle, although nothing really new to us, but I would want you to know that I know that originally it was scheduled to come out mid-August, but it is coming out tonight, is what they told us earlier today. Thanks, Michelle. I appreciate it. Rob.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to touch base on some equipment that we purchased and that we've had in the district, and some of the cleaning and disinfecting products that we use. Cleaning and disinfecting products. Well, actually, I'll go back to the slide here. Last year we purchased 4 of the Victory electrostatic sprayers, and this summer we placed an order for 7 more of the handheld units that's going to be deployed in every one of the schools. Each one of our disinfecting products can be used in those electrostatic sprayers. It's going to greatly increase the coverage in the buildings, as opposed to spraying things with a spray bottle, or a wet rag. Those items are going to be vital, in disinfecting these buildings, especially the high school and the larger buildings, where they're just so big. The square footage is just so big. All the buildings will be cleaned and disinfected on a daily and nightly basis. All your high touch surfaces, your doorknobs, railings, push buttons on elevators and vending machines, All your high touch areas in the bathrooms will be disinfected during the day while staff and students are present. We'll come up with a cleaning schedule. I'm hoping to bring in some part-time help during the day just to offset some of those tasks. So that way we can get on a more regular cleaning schedule while the staff and students are in the building. All the cleaning products are EPA registered and have emerging viral pathogen kill claims when they're used as directed.
And that's really important. We want to put that out there, Rob, because that makes a difference to some of the movement in our buildings, because it has to sit there for at least 10 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of the disinfectants, they have dwell times. We have disinfectants that have dwell times from 1 minute to 10 minutes, depending on what the product is. The 1 minute product, obviously, that's going to be, key for if we end up with, any situations where somebody has symptoms of COVID and they end up in the isolation room. It's really going to play a huge role in that. Custodial staff every year takes part in professional development. And the Massachusetts Facilities Administrative Association just put an email out yesterday that they're going to have an online training second week of August that's strictly geared towards dealing with COVID-19 and protocols that should be taking place during the school day, if we have situations that come up, and then also general cleaning as it relates to COVID.
So Rob, I think one of the other things I think that is of interest is I know that you and your staff have been working diligently since, in essence, school finished in June with a notion that you knew that the month of August would be very different. Do you want to talk that through for a minute, please?
Sure. When March 13th rolled around, and students and staff, went home for the rest of the year, the custodial staff was doing regular building checks, doing small projects and things like that. And then we were able to come back in the buildings full time. We sat down, individually as schools, kind of laid out some expectations that, we've got a little bit extra time, but we really don't, because once August rolls around, we all knew that, things were going to get really, really crazy as far as trying to set up classrooms and just trying to lay out what the groundwork is going to be as far as coming back to school. And they really took it to heart and they hit everything head on. We're in a really good shape right now. We'll probably be pretty much wrapped up with summer cleaning by the end of next week. And so that we can focus our efforts on, getting the staff and student back into the buildings.
I know, Rob, you and I have talked to about tents, and I know that we've talked about that potential with some of our principals. That is something that we're looking into. And I know somebody had said, I think actually, Kathy, I think it was one of the letters that you wrote or read earlier tonight. It is something that we're looking into and considering, and even as including heaters. Not suggesting that we're putting children out there and minus 40-degree temperatures, but we're just saying how long might we be able to use that? Not so much at the high school. I think we were looking more at the middle and elementary. We're talking about space again, use of space for whether it's some type of movement, whether it's nice days, can we put children out there for feeding, all that kind of thing. So we would want folks to know that we're looking into that as well. So.
Yeah, each of the elementary and middle schools have, the outdoor basketball courts that I think would be conducive for, putting the tents up for, just mobility issues. But if we have kids in wheelchairs and things like that, everybody will be able to use that space pretty easily. I know another hot topic is, the ventilation concerns that everybody has. Each one of our buildings has the capabilities of bringing in fresh air from the outside, fresh air makeup. The two schools in Stowe, they have univents in each of the classroom, which brings in fresh air from the outside. In the cooling season, it crosses a coil with the chilled water. And in the heating season, it crosses the air crosses the coils with the heated water in them. Same thing over here at Sawyer. There are univents inside the classrooms. Again, you can bring in 100% outside air. Emerson, they have rooftop units, which brings in the air from the rooftop down in through the ductwork into the building. Same high school has multiple different pieces of equipment in it. You have rooftop units, you've got energy recovery units, and they work on the same principle as bringing in fresh air from the outside. down in Lancaster, you have the unit vents in the classroom. During the summer, regularly scheduled maintenance that we do, we change all the filters out inside all the units, whether it's the rooftop units, the energy recovery units, the unit vents that are in the classroom. There's some new guidance that's come out this week from the American Society of Heating and Air Conditioning. You know, they would like to see a MERV 13 filter put inside each one of these units. On newer units, that's feasible. On some of the older units, like we have at the high school, you would really cut down on the amount of air that you can actually supply into the building, because those MERV 13 or even a HEPA filter it would be very restrictive. And the fans and, you know, the blowers and stuff just aren't designed to have that sort of a filter in it. You know, they're looking at, you know, changing out filters once a month, you know, instead of quarterly or biannually or annually. With that mindset, we could probably bump up those the MERV rating on the filters that we use now to maybe an 11 or a 12, which would, you know, definitely give us some added, you know, protection in the building. Like I said, every piece of equipment that we have does operate. We run all the systems off a building management system. So anytime a piece of equipment was to go down, we get an alarm. We've got a great group of vendors that we use. The response time is incredible. Usually the same day, if not the next day in the morning, to come out, diagnose the problem, and get it fixed as soon as possible if we can't take care of it in-house.
Great, thanks, Rob. And also, according to the commissioner today, there is a new set of guidelines that will be coming out tonight sometime, specific to facilities. So we'll make sure that you get that. Thank you. Health and wellness. Lisa.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Lisa Gilpicki. I'm nurse coordinating the health and wellness for the school district. I'm going to start very quickly with just some of the updates from the command center. Data is specific to Bolton, Lancaster, and Stowe. I do send the updates daily when I receive them to the principals and administration team and nurses. There is going to be a change, which is actually a positive, I think, from Massachusetts, that beginning this week, the reports will only be coming out on Tuesdays and Thursdays instead of daily. That tells us that the trends are continuing to go down, which is a good thing. Bolton has had 11 positive COVID tests since March, very low compared to some other districts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There's been no deaths in Bolton. Stowe has had 8 positive COVID tests, again, since March. No deaths. Lancaster had 8 positive, but 23 deaths. It sounds a little funny, but it's because they didn't test some of them knowing that they had symptoms of COVID in the nursing home. So again, very low. As far as local hospitalizations currently in our district right now, St. Vincent's Hospital has only 4 hospitalized patients with either COVID suspected or confirmed, including ICUs. Emerson only has 2. Neshoba Valley Medical Center has 0. U.S. Memorial Medical Center campus has 9. U.S. Memorial Marlborough has 0. And Clinton has 1. And you're probably asking, why is this important, and what's giving updates on reopening? It's really important for us to keep track of what our data is in our area, because it really does help focus on what type of model we would do for reopening. Models would look very differently in Boston when their higher rates are going on than we are. So it's important to really follow that data for our district, and I just wanted to share that with you. So I'm going to go to some of the things that we're doing for health. Isolation rooms and PPE. So I'm sorry, I'm going to back up. I'm going to start, and I didn't put it on there. It's talk about pre-screening and what that looks like for our district. That's a requirement for DESE. According to DESE guidelines, checking for symptoms each morning by families and caregivers is critical and will serve as a primary screening mechanism for COVID-19 symptoms. We will provide information to families in their primary language to support them conducting the symptoms check. And families should not send their children to school if they exhibit symptoms. This pertains to staff as well, and that communication will go out to families. Screening procedures are not required at the point of entry, which was indicated months ago that we would have to do that, as well as temperature checks. Isolation room and PPEs, we worked very closely and collaboratively with Rob Frieswick and facilities management to really make sure that we had isolation rooms that are required in order to minimize transmission of COVID-19. Schools must ensure that they have an isolated space available for students and staff displaying symptoms. This room must be separate from the nurse's office. A student or staff who shows COVID-19 symptoms during the school day should be moved to the specific room, be designated for medical related isolation until they can be picked up or driven home themselves. Rob and I worked through every building several times to assure that things that were needed, equipment, PPE, moving of desk and curtains and dividers in order to maintain the appropriate distance for isolation space was maintained. So we feel pretty good about that. Let's see. Wearing of gloves. So per the initial supply guidance issued by DESE, schools should have an inventory of standard healthcare supplies with masks and gloves. Use of additional supplies may be optional based on types of tasks performed, and that means goggles and gowns. Teachers do not need to wear gloves while teaching, but may need to during necessary contact with students, such as when providing physical support to students with disabilities. Supplies were a little bit of a challenge for Rob and I to get them for the district, but we feel pretty solid on that. I know other districts are still struggling, and we, as he mentioned, had a head start in March and saw the future of what it may look like, and really started back in March, where other schools were waiting for this guidance and started then. So we got a really good jump head start on it, knowing that we were going to need this. Surveillance and SNAP. SNAP is our electronic health documentation. This is also going to be required by the nurses to do surveillance. It's very similar to contact tracing. Health service records can be used to document interventions performed at school related to the school community on a whole versus an individual person. So what that means, for example, planning for school reentry screening summary documentation. So we have to document that students are coming in with not health-related concerns, community-based procedures, and case tracking. So what we've had to do is create these libraries and templates within our own electronic documentation. There were several of them. It took quite a bit of time to do, and we'll have to do some teaching with the nurses on that. But then they'll be able to tell us, for example, if what came into the nurse's office and said, I have a sore throat and I feel like I have a fever, and she does. We can put that as COVID symptoms without her being a name.
Lisa, can I ask that you put your mic closer to your mouth, please? Because it feels like you're getting farther and farther away.
Sorry.
Thank you. That's so much better. Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. So if we use that as an example, we can trace, and if the local board of health needed to get information on how many symptoms of students that we have, not their names, we could pull that report up very quickly in each school. And we have never had the capacity to do that before. So it's a huge undertaking, and they're going to require us to do that surveillance. Training and resources. Requirements from DESE to provide and reinforce COVID-19 focused education and training for all staff, including mitigation procedures, personal hygiene, signs and symptoms of illness, assessment, referral process for students requiring mental health supports, and the use and disposal of health and safety supplies. This training was also provided for the ESY summer program. Additional resources and videos on how to properly don and doff PPE, which is putting on and off, was provided as well. We will do extensive training with staff when we return, and we will work obviously with human resources and our principals and admin team how we can set up those trainings to make sure that every building receives the proper training that they need for PPE. Sure, go ahead.
Lisa, I just want to tag onto that too quickly. That's another one of the reasons why we needed those days up front when we first get back. When we talk about training, I mean, we were talking about teaching and learning and professional development, but this kind of training also needs to occur when we first get back. Thank you. Whoops.
You're welcome.
I don't think she was quite finished there. Can you go back, Alita? Thank you.
So I'm just going to fly through this because those are still somewhat in the making. So when I talk about protocols, we're just talking about, again, some of those trainings that go along with it. Protocol for proper use of PPE and disposal of it, when to stay home. And that's a protocol, not so much for staff but also for communities as well. Also, just training on when to send a student to the nurse. I'm going to be a little bit different. Hand hygiene throughout the day. We need to have some protocols of looking at it in a different perspective. They should be washing when they come in and prior to them leaving the buildings. And there'll be more to come with those protocols as the guidelines come out.
That's
Community
exactly right.
resource-
Yeah, we're expecting more from the DESE in this
Yeah.
area as well.
Yeah. Community resources. I do communication with DPH bi-weekly. We consult regularly with Dr. Coleman. If those who do not know, we do have a pediatric physician that we do consult with quite often. He's our school-based physician. We are so grateful to have him. I also communicate with the local Board of Health regularly, who will be instrumental in our guidelines as well as we navigate the opening of schools. I utilize the command center updates to follow those data and have a wealth of information and data collection. The CDC website, which is regularly updated based on command center, and the World Health Organization, and obviously our guidance from Bessie. Those are all the things that guideline our health and safety as it comes from health.
And I'm not sure, Lisa, if you mentioned the Massachusetts Department of Health, but that's also in the mix.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tom, I think you're last. Now is Tom.
My apologies, I was not audible there.
That's
so I
great.
said, last but not least, and even through all this craziness, I still love talking about school nutrition. So thank you for having me here tonight. We've worked on a couple of different scenarios and how we're going to feed our students and teachers and staff throughout the up and coming year. Our first scenario would be in classroom feeding, where we would have 3 pre-made choices, 1 hot meal, 1 salad meal, or 1 sandwich meal offered to the students and staff in each classroom. That would be brought in insulated containers to keep the hot food hot and the cold food cold. Would also bring the POS systems also to the serving areas, and that way we'll be able to keep track of the student meals that are being served. Students in the upper grades, or students who wear their IDs, would be provided with a UPC code to attach to the back of their ID and lanyard, and that will allow them to come through the line with a hands-free option. No one would need to put in their PIN, because they'll just need to scan their ID, the back of their ID. And then in our elementary schools, or students who aren't able to wear their IDs will use rosters or homeroom picture identification, as well as verbal identifications. In cafeteria feeding, clearly is the best case scenario for us, because we're able to provide more service to the students who will be in the schools during the days of their learning experience. I'm meeting tomorrow with the company to look at adding some plexiglass barriers at our in our servery and on our cashier lines. There'll be no self-serve items, and sandwiches and salads will all be pre-made, and condiments will be portion packed to avoid any type of hands-on interaction with students. And then our remote learning. So even if we do in a hybrid situation, whether it be with the classroom feeding, the cafeteria feeding, we'll still have students, either partially or all of our students, in a remote learning scenario. And those students will be able to be fed following the same grab and go model we used prior to our closing on June 17th. Some meal preparation thoughts that we've been hashing around are all staff will wear PPEs, including masks, gloves, and head coverings. Staff temperatures will be taken, and logged daily upon arrival. Hot meals will be prepared prior to service day, pre-packaged and delivered to each school for rethermalization and service. We're able to do this because we received some grant funding, which allowed us to buy yet another packaging machine. So we were able to use that during the COVID feeding up until June 17th. But now we have the ability to run 2 kitchens as a pre-packaging facility to make sure that we have all the meals follow all the guidelines and all the nutrient needs for our students. And we're able to do this again because the high school and Luther Burbank School now each have machines to be able to seal foods in one-time service containers, and they'll be able to be sent to the schools for service. The cold meals will still be prepared at each facility or feeding site, and students will order meals each day during attendance through the Power School software. With the teacher's assistants. Some things we're going to need to think about. We're already seeing an increase in prices, even with the bids that we've received. Companies, for instance, gloves have gone from $18 a case to $89 a case. And when pressured to look at holding their bid price, companies have threatened to throw away the whole bid and not bid anything. Trucking and food supplies are currently at a premium. You can see that in some of your local grocery stores as you go to try to go down the meat aisle and things like that. Some of the items you may be used to, you're not seeing, so you get to try new things. We're in a fairly decent scenario with our food right now because we have a decent supply on hand, and we also have our USDA foods that have been diverted for processing. Hopefully we'll be able to get them with the trucking issues that are going on. We do have a high cost in labor, and we are probably not going to have a lot of a la carte sales or catering sales, which do generate a large portion of our income for the revolving account. But all things considered, we're looking forward to getting back to operating and seeing our school friends again. And no matter what is thrown at us, we will be ready.
Great.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So with that, you've kind of heard, I believe that's the last slide, Alita, if memory serves me right. And so that's kind of the overview of this half. Next meeting we'll be focusing on SPED, extended learning, because we do anticipate that there will be some type of extended learning. We'll probably do some various committee report outs so that you hear that as well, and we'll have greater detail in terms of the model that we're using. Just a couple of quick things, and then we'll open up for questions. I know that the school committee has worked on an FAQ sheet, and I think it's probably got, Todd might have to refresh my memory, I think it's probably got about 50 questions on it. And we'll probably, is that right, Todd? Yes?
It's roughly just under 50 questions.
Yeah.
I've reformatted it. It's pretty much ready to go.
Okay, thanks.
So it's going to be up on the website and under the fall reopening tab.
Right, thank you. So we have that FAQ, and that's just questions that they've heard from their constituents and such. Our steering committee has, I think that's probably got about 100 or more questions, and so we're working on that. Hopefully we'll have that up online too. We're aiming for this weekend as well for questions that they're hearing. I think one of the other things, and I know we've still got some of our principals online here, we know that at some point in time coming up as this flushes out, we're going to want to start to pull our parents in. We're just mapping out what that looks like, and so that we can have some type of forums with them, and so that nobody feels surprised or with whatever it is that they're expecting to see in the classrooms. We want them to see it in real time. So we'll be pulling some of those things together as well. So you've heard kind of a snapshot from each of the departments that presented tonight. So I know that they're still on there, and our principals are on there as well. So Kathy will open it up for questions.
Okay, so I want everyone to be able to ask their questions. I would ask that if you have a question, raise your hand so I can see it, and we'll go from there. But if it's okay with folks, I have an order that I'm seeing people. I'm gonna go through the order first, but I want everybody to ask the questions that they have and to the appropriate person. So Elaine, you're the first tile on my queue. Do you have any questions?
I do, but I also have the advantage of being on the steering committee. So I've had the opportunity to throw out a ton of questions in those meetings. So I want to make sure that everybody has a chance. So I'm just going to ask one, and that is to Anne Marie. You were mentioning like FMLA and the FFCRA and everything, and it sounded like there were a lot of medical based options for staff who may not be able to return. But I was wondering if you talk about any options for people that don't feel comfortable returning. What are the options there? Because I think that looks differently for families than for staff. And if that's correct, or could you explain those differences?
There are fewer options for staff members who are uncomfortable returning, not because that they've got a health reason or a family health reason or anything like that, or childcare concern, but they're just their tolerance for for uncertainty is a little bit lower. So that there are some options for leaves of absence, some contractual type things, not so much for the FMLA or the ADA maybe, but there are some contractual options open to them, but definitely their options are fewer.
Okay, and it sounds like some of the things you mentioned were temporary as well. Like, so if they're missing childcare, that works, but that's going to expire. So, do you expect to see like an inconsistency in when staff are here and when they're not? Because I'd like to maintain consistency both for the staff and for the students, and not have people out for a month and then coming back, and then out for a month and coming back, things like that.
Right. Well, there are some of the opportunities for people who have got family concerns fall into more than one category. So really those people need to contact me, because we could perhaps work with them to patch together. But the one statute that's specifically for childcare presupposes that the reason that they need the childcare is because the child's daycare or school is closed, and that there's no one else available to take care of the child. And that's limited to a couple of weeks. And that's one of the ones that expires on December 31st.
Okay.
Also, some of the ones under the FFCRA, what's an RCA? CRA, there are limitations on the eligibility, and there are some limitations on the pay there. So, I mean, yeah. So the options are less. The options are fewer. I can't hear you.
I said, like everything else, it's complicated.
Complicated in the extreme. It really is something that gonna need to sit with every single person and look at what they've got there, what their status is, and what their what their challenges are, and see what we can work out for each of them.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, so like I said, I'm going to hang back and let other people go.
Thank you. Mary, do you have any questions?
I think that the presentations were very well done. And while I don't have a lot of questions, I think a lot of the questions that we've heard from, especially from parents, will start to be answered. One overarching question has been the quality of the remote learning. And so I was especially, perking up to any of that, and wondering if Todd perhaps could just define synchronous and asynchronous learning, just because that would be a help, I think, for parents.
Todd?
Do you hear me?
So we've actually done that in our document, in our comprehensive
Yeah.
document. So we're actually creating kind of a list of terms to help define. So synchronous learning really is that real-time teacher to student, face-to-face in real-time learning where there's active instruction, whereas asynchronous learning might be, you know, a taped video lesson or a flipped classroom that students are watching, or, you know, or an activity that they are doing. So there's really a push for the synchronous where you've got teacher and student really interacting in real time. And as we know, as we went to remote in the spring, that was difficult for a lot of districts because that requires training for teachers. And it also requires training for students on platforms that require safety, security, those kinds of things, precautions when you're in a remote learning environment. So that's something that we've really stepped up with to make sure that we are going to address come the fall.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions, Mary? Thank you. Steve, any questions?
Madam Chairman, I yield my time to Ms. Viverito.
All right, I feel like Hollywood Squares here. I'm going to go to the square beneath you. Go ahead, Leah, you have questions. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you to the gentleman from Stowe. I appreciate that extra time being granted because I have, I think, 7 questions, but some of them are very quick. So I'll start. Are the Hale and Center kitchens operational again?
They were never not operational. We
But
just
the
chose
water,
not to use them.
But the water is totally fine now, all that?
So again, they were never not operational. We used bottled water in cooking, and we never had to close those kitchens.
So I think, Leah, your question is probably to Rob. Yeah, Rob's got his hand up. Thanks, Rob.
Hi, Leah. Actually, right before the kids and staff went out in the middle part of March, the week before, we were supposed to go live with the new filtration system for the PFAS contamination. But because there was no movement in the building, a certain amount of water has to pass through those filtration vessels in order for them to work properly. So they were never put online, and they've just been sitting idle. Right now, we're going through and we're retesting the filters for bacteria. And then as soon as we get a clean bill of health on those, we're going to run a significant amount of water through those filters for a couple of weeks, and then take samples for the actual PFAS contamination, see where our levels are at, and then we can go from there. In hopes that the numbers are below the threshold, and then once staff and students come back in, we'll be off and running at that point.
Awesome. So my next question is for the high school task force membership. I clicked on that link and it brought me to another document that kind of listed the task force. The task force seems to have 2 sides to its coin. There's an A and a B, and I didn't see any parents listed on there. Can you just give me an update on that?
I'm not sure if Steve, is Steve on?
Yeah, I'm still on. We actually have a parent on there as well, and we're still kind of working through that. We haven't met as a group yet. We're going to meet. Monday is going to be our first meeting.
So Steve, do you need parent volunteers still?
No, I think Lori Barnett's going to be on there with us.
Okay.
I wasn't sure because she was on the other committee as well, but she agreed to join with us. Yep.
Okay. So the A and the B, what is that?
It's looking at health and safety and looking at curriculum stuff.
Okay.
So I didn't want to get a whole lot into that right now. So that's kind of that's just our thought process based on what we're looking at with the number of people we had that signed up.
Yeah, so I definitely had some high school parents reach out to me and say that they were interested. So to have just one parent seems low. Is it possible to have maybe one more parent, or?
We can look at it. We were trying to keep people that were part of our I can't remember what the name of the thing is. School council. Thank you, Brooke. Involved in that, and we only had one parent on the school council, so that's why I asked her to join.
Got it. Okay. So I think that I'm still a little confused about devices, because we said that we purchased enough Chromebooks for 3 to 5, but are those Chromebooks only available if we go to full remote, or will they be available in hybrid as well?
No,
They'll be available in hybrid as well. As Brooke mentioned, when we talk about one-to-one, some people think of that as one device, one child. And that will be the case for our 3 through 12 students. We made sure that we applied for CARES money that would address that, because we knew that some of our youngsters did not have access to a device, every kid, every device. Our K through 2 students work with iPads, so that's very different in terms of executive functioning skills on a Chromebook. So, we're focused on the 3 through 12. So we can't fully go into what we consider a one-to-one model in terms of training. That takes a lot of training of our students and our staff to go fully into that. But in terms of providing a device for every student in the district 3 through 12, every student can and will be equipped with a device should we be remote.
And/or hybrid.
And/or hybrid, yes.
And/or hybrid. Yep.
Okay, so I mean, it's worth noting that parents who have a K through 2nd grader, myself included, that child will not have a device in either of those environments. So, I mean, it's incumbent upon the parents to provide that, right?
It will be. We use the seesaw model in K through 2, but as we did in the spring, those families, those homes that do not have a device in the home, we certainly can provide a loaner for those families, as we did in the spring. And the same process will exist in getting those kinds of loaners for those kids.
Okay, I'm kind of quickly, I'm sorry. So is it true that you guys will kind of schedule all the kids as if they're full in person and then move to a hybrid from there, assuming that at some point maybe a vaccine comes online and in February we can all go back? Will the schedules across all the buildings be ready to take us all back in?
I think I'm not sure if I'm going to answer your question exactly how you're asking it, but that's one of the reasons why we're looking at the 5-day and looking at the level of commonalities that we could get across the district, so that we could toggle back and forth between full, return, remote, and hybrid. And so the models that we're designing are for that very reason.
Awesome. And so as I was looking at your charts, it seems like hybrid options 2 and 3 are somewhat similar. And so even though it was a third, 2/3 were looking for their kids to have in-person access every week. And so, which days the kids come in each week seemed, that varied. But I wonder, why Wednesday as the day off?
Todd, Todd, you can take it, but I can certainly help out.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, Wednesday also, when everyone is remote, gives a day between the 2 cohorts for our facilities to do thorough cleanings of our buildings. And that's a huge priority between the 2 groups. That's a huge consideration. And I would say a major consideration when we take a look at that, to give them the time to do that, to make sure that those buildings are sanitized appropriately. So when we were looking at hybrid schedules and collaborating with several other districts, that was a very popular model that was put forward.
Yep, makes sense. So my next thing is, I assume that you guys will do your very best to make sure that the children in families all go on the same days.
Sure. Thanks. That's a great question. And I know that Michelle, we've had that conversation as well. And you heard her allude to that with the busing, for example. And, we've had lots of discussion about that, even with our principals group. So yes, it makes sense on so many levels that we try to get particularly our elementary and middle. That's our top priority, is to try to get the elementary and middle school families in, and then if we can get those high school folks in, we can. But it's our younger children. We want to make sure, especially because of the childcare, that's the flip side of this, right?
Yes.
So so that's come up. One of the other things that has come up too, and we've had this conversation. I wouldn't be prepared to say how we're going to deal with this, but certainly around the principal's table, we've talked about childcare for families that maybe, for example, maybe they all live in the same cul-de-sac, or as my own son calls them, his bubble family, other families that they can connect with, and they all have the same values and all wear the mask, I'll do the same, you know, and so we can see that there may be some wiggle room there that we'll try to take advantage of to where it's possible. That's not a driving force for us, but it's certainly on our minds, and we know that that would be a huge help to our families.
And just a quick offshoot to that, I've had a lot of people talk to me about how, with regard to social emotional learning, when you cut a classroom in half, it is possible that kids could be isolated from kind of peers who they're like friendly with. And so I know that you have so many things that you're managing, but a lot of people have worried that their child would end up on the 2 days a week where they don't have any kind of peer support.
We've had that discussion as well. So certainly we're well aware of that. And again, we try to do everything that we can to do what's right for children first. And so even though that kind of falls out of, I don't know, for example, if you were alphabetizing, you know, your groups, we still have that in the back of our mind. So we're certainly reflecting on it.
Thank you so much. So quick, 2 more, I'm sorry. So I just want to say that I bet some of the buildings aren't air conditioned, and I'm really worried about heat and wearing masks. And so I know that even in my high school, we've clocked temperatures at 90 degrees in my classroom. So I'm really worried about that and just air filtration. And I'll just let that float out there. That's something that other people are worried about too. So I just want to put that out there. And my last piece is about
actually, Leah, can we respond to that for a minute?
Yeah,
because you know, Rob and I've had a number of discussions, and that's actually the whole airflow piece is one of the reasons why he talked today about the HVAC system and the filtrations and all that kind of thing. The heat, though, I would want you to know that Rob and I've also had a number of discussions on that too. So it's something that we're looking into. We're not prepared tonight to say what that looks like, but please know that we're looking into it.
Thank you. So my last piece is about the teachers.
Excuse me, Leah.
Yeah.
Todd had his hand up. Did you want to say something?
I just wanted to go back to your question previously about the schedule in terms of the 2 days in, and then what Wednesday. I think it was kind of said that, or I don't know, that Wednesday is a day off. I want to be clear that Wednesday is not a day off. That is a full day of remote learning that would include synchronous and asynchronous learning that allows the entire district community to be involved in very similar, consistent activities and learning that allows for that one big. So I want to clarify that for the community. Wednesday's not a day off. It would be a full planned day where everyone is just remote.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, Leah.
Yeah, so my last one is probably the hardest one, and it's something that I'm grappling with myself as a teacher, and that is I'm really worried about how much we're asking our teachers to do in managing what could possibly be multiple models at once. And so maybe not now, but eventually I'm sure you guys will come forward with kind of an explanation, and I'm sure the union is on this too, but how can teachers do all of the above?
So you know what, that's such a great question, and please know that we've had multiple discussions on that too. And again, I don't think we're prepared to come forward tonight, but we've had different ideas floating out there. And I think if not next meeting, the meeting thereafter that we have, we'll probably bring some more level of specificity to that, because we're very conscientious of that. And you know, I think one of the things that came through on one of the surveys, I can't remember, for teachers is, and it wasn't even something that was negative. It was just like, please be fair, you know, and so we understand that, we hear that. And you're right, you know, so we're very conscientious of that and making sure that we don't bring forth a workload that is not doable.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Joe, questions?
Thank you, Madam President. I had 2 questions. One for.
Now we know, definitely, Joe, it's definitely your microphone.
Might be my headset. All right. Is that any better?
Oh, that's way better.
Okay. All right.
No crackling at all. Poor Mary.
My first question is for Anne Marie. She had piqued my curiosity with something she said about risky behavior. And I was wondering if she could expound upon that and what exactly she meant with regards to risky behavior.
Well, the example that I gave about Disney World is the one, you know, if someone, you know, people coming into Massachusetts from certain states don't need to self-quarantine, but coming in from other states, they're being asked to self-quarantine. If you were going for a trip to Disney, and you came back and you would ask for a week of leave to do that, and then you came back, you would be asked, unless, depending on what the state of the guidance is, right now you would be asked to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. So the question for discussion and for a resolution is, what happens to the employee during those 2 weeks? Your week's vacation, now we won't see you for 3. So there's that part. But people are free to do what they want to do, and maybe it's more of an awareness raising, partially an awareness raising thing too. But yeah, that's something that's being bandied around in the webinars and getting guidance, waiting for more.
Yeah, okay, because my question was, I don't know if in the webinars they discussed this or whether or not the district would have something like this, but would there be a definition for risky behavior? Because I can kind of foresee a number of activities that would be deemed risky by one person, but maybe not risky by another. I'm thinking perhaps, for example, church service. People are clamoring to attend church services, though there are some who feel that that may be a risky behavior. So I'm just curious if there's any sort of definition or there's something that the district is going to look at to determine whether or not this is something that we might need to look at as far as people's behavior.
We haven't gotten that far into discussion yet, but I don't imagine that we're going to be the risky behavior police. The ones who are going to tell people to do this and don't do that.
Okay.
Basically, off-duty conduct is off-duty unless it's something you're doing out there that's bringing disrepute, to the district. You're on your own. So that will all be fleshed out, but not soon, and probably not even by us. That's probably something that will come
I was
down.
gonna say, I don't see that as a school district. That will come down. That will be guidance given to us, Joe. I don't think that will be something that we work out individually as a separate school district.
Okay. And my second question was to Ms. Cody. I was just curious, and if she mentioned it and I didn't hear it, I apologize. But as far as transportation is concerned, has the bus company made any representation or overtures in regard to their ability to staff all the routes that we're going to need to with transportation for our children?
Yes, they don't anticipate there being any problems as far as getting drivers for all 29 routes. Even if we did have to have a route where, we have multiple runs of that specific route, she doesn't anticipate there being any issue with extended time for any of the drivers. And so they've always been pretty well staffed and always have a few spare drivers in the mix as well.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you. Amy?
Oops, we can't hear you,
Amy,
Amy.
you're muted.
Is that better?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. I wanted to thank every one of you that presented tonight and answered a lot of my questions. I know you addressed a lot of the concerns that I've heard from parents that have reached out to me. And I know how much work you've put into preparing for tonight's meeting. So I wanted to let you know how much we appreciate it. Leah addressed most of the questions I have, to be honest. She covered most of those for me, so thank you, colleague and Stowe. One thing I wanted to say, I was happy to hear that Superintendent Clenchey say that forums are going to be planned with, I think you said with principals. I was wondering if.
Well, yeah, so that we're in the early planning stages of those as we start to flesh out what those could look like. And I think that they have to really get their work off the ground with their task forces. And then I think you'll see something come down the pike thereafter.
Okay. I think that's something that I've heard from several parents, that they would like an opportunity to be able to ask more detailed questions.
Well, again, we want to keep in mind, yeah, Amy, we want to keep in mind too that, again, we've heard certainly for 2,800 responses, so we've got lots of that, and I certainly receive a lot of emails. I know that our principals receive a lot of emails as well, so people are reaching out to us, and they've got lots of venues that they can go after, and right now I would say parents are being just amazing, honestly, because they're sending their questions to all the right people. So they seem to know that if it's school-based, then it's going to the principals. If it's a district-based question, it's coming to our areas. And if it's coming to me and it's something that Rob can answer, I put it off to Rob, or sometimes it's very often it's like for Lisa, and we put it off to Lisa to respond to. I think one of the things I really appreciated about the FAQs as we've been pulling them together is you can see some commonalities, you know, and I think that those, when they go out too, I think will offer more information too. So I do think people are reaching out. Not think, I know they are.
I know that everybody, you and the principals and everybody else have been very busy responding to all the questions, and I appreciate that. I'm having a hard time hearing without my headphones on, so I'm sorry if
That's okay.
I'm leaning in like that. My only other question was for Rob regarding the HVAC system. I was under the impression that when you were talking about bringing in fresh air, I guess I was thinking of the opposite of trying to exhaust the air from the classrooms outside. Can you, I don't know if that's, we're talking about.
You're right, it's both. You can certainly explain that.
All those systems are balanced, you know, with the amount of fresh air that you bring in, there is exhaust fans that take that air out. You know, there's, with some of the older buildings, I don't know what the refresh rate is, but there are refresh rates within each one of the buildings. I know some of the buildings might be 15 minutes. Some of the older buildings, I'm not quite sure what that is. But there is exhaust, you know, whatever air comes in, the air that's in gets exhausted out, you know, through vents.
Okay. Amy, any other questions?
Amy, did you have any other questions? No.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Sharon, do you have any questions?
Sharon, you're mute. There we go.
I was trying to figure that out. It's late. My brain is tired. I think my questions have already been answered. I just wanted to say there is so much behind the scenes work going on. It is overwhelming. It is such an overwhelming task that you're working on, but thank you for all of the work that you're doing. And I really hope that you guys all have some time to relax this summer, that it's not all just work to try and figure this out. This is a really, really big job. And thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon. Brett, questions?
No questions, but I do have a piece of good news for you.
Yes.
Lancaster, as of this evening, is 0 cases for confirmed COVID in town.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Good news. Okay. Thanks, Brett. Last but not least, Mr. Horesh.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Again, thank you. This was an exhaustive presentation. I said exhaustive, but you know, very much appreciated. I'm sure not just by the people on this call, but the people who are watching and who will watch. I guess I want to start off by also establishing that for me personally, this "do you have any questions? Here's a direct answer" kind of forum for the school committee has been tremendously helpful. Even though we've had this Google document where questions have been answered, I do think that you know, granting the same opportunity to the public would be you know, the most direct opportunity to optimize communication between the district and you know, concerned members of the community. Of course, there are people that are reaching out, and of course, there are opportunities to answer questions. But just as this has been incredibly helpful for us, I do feel like it would also be equally helpful to the community. No response needed for that. I just wanted to voice that opinion. I just have 3 questions, and it turns out they're all surrounding teaching, which I didn't expect. But my first question is, in any version of a remote model, whether it's hybrid or full remote, teachers will not have the same resources to fulfill their typical curriculum largely because of time constraints or interactions with students. Knowing that the curriculum is always based on the guidelines from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, how will teachers and administrators collaborate to prioritize teaching standards for each class and at each level so that our kids are the benefactors of the most academically dense material? I mean, we are going to have to decide which material is, we're basically going to have to triage if we've got these time constraints. And I'm just wondering if we're going to give our teachers opportunities to collaborate in that way so that we can parse out what is necessary and what we can kind of put on the back burner, at least for the time being.
Who's gonna?
I'm not sure, Todd, do you want to follow that up, or what?
I can follow that up. I mean, I think that so far we've heard that in terms of standards and benchmarks, it's going to be all systems go in the fall.
Yeah.
I think in the spring, they sort of gave us a set of essential standards and benchmarks that we needed to focus on. But moving forward this fall, that's not the case. The expectation is to really hit all of them. And so knowing that is why we have created building-based task forces so early on. And it's funny, Martine is just reaching out to me now because she's left the meeting and she's my curriculum guru. But the work that we're doing this summer, she's telling me during the summer curriculum mapping for math and ELA is just that. So we've created those templates this summer for our summer work with our curriculum department and our teaching and learning department, as well as our teachers to be working on those consistent maps across the district so that they are consistent and so that they are cohesive. Our meeting, we met with principals yesterday, and their desire to meet with teaching and learning regularly so that that is the case, so that there is consistency across the district is really, really important. And it's the feedback that we've got. The superintendent mentioned my work with assistant superintendents across the state in my grouping, and we're really creating those curriculum maps, those curriculum templates, so that there's consistency with that moving forward, because we know it's a pretty big undertaking, and we know the expectation is to hit all standards, as well as moving forward. The assessment from students and feedback also is really the need, and the ask is to be what it always has been moving forward. So we're well aware of that, and I think that our building task forces, you can see, as staffed as they are taking that on.
The commissioner has been, I'll just finish that up by saying the commissioner has been very clear. There's no prioritizing right now. This is not like the spring remote. This is all things. So very, very different approach.
Yeah, I would just add that from personal experience, we are, I mean, at least at the high school level, we have been asked across the disciplines to sort of compartmentalize our content in the event that we do have to make some decisions. So, if that does come to pass, I would just, obviously strongly advise to tap into the wisdom of the teachers. They are sort of on the front lines of that.
Yeah, it's a huge part and huge reason why we really wanted to have those humanities and math STEM leads this year in the department, because they certainly have the expertise to really look at that and prioritize those standards. And the work that they're doing this summer with our teachers is just that. And when we came to you folks about our teaching and learning team and what we needed, we saw that as a need. And the work that they're doing around that this summer is just that work, Mike. So thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
And Mike, I would just want to point out too that those people are still union. They are still classified as full-time teachers. Yeah. They are not administrators. They are full-time teachers. They just happen to be working out of our building right now. So, but they're teachers who have shown great capacity, and we're thrilled with the work that they're doing. Thanks, Mike. You had another question, I think, or two.
Yeah, he had two more, Mike.
I have two more, I promise. I really do only have three. So the second of three is, we outlined earlier that under the CARES Act, there is a funding source that we're taking advantage of, which is great. And I'm wondering if there is a component of that acts almost like a slush fund, where we can
you
allow...
know the term for that?
I'm sorry?
Don't call it slush.
Okay, a general fund.
Thank you.
Whereby we can direct money towards teachers to acquire technology that they're going to need to seamlessly transition into whether it's asynchronous learning or a fully remote model. I know personally that there are things that I'm going to have to purchase, whether it's out of my own pocket or my district is going to have to help me with, that I just don't have right now. And I'm just wondering if we have funds available that we can direct for that purpose for teachers.
Yeah, Todd would be happy to fill that.
So yeah, so I led that group in terms of that money. So we made sure that we had stakeholders from multiple departments, as well as people in Unit A like Karen and Kim, who are my leads in the teaching and learning department from those disciplines. So in terms of looking at what we did was we asked everybody to identify what their needs were. And then what we did as a group, this included business and finance, human resources, special education, all of our disciplines. And what we did as a group was we prioritized and categorized things, 1 with most essential need, up to 3 would love to have it, but it could maybe go. So we did that, and we certainly made sure that we identified monies to be put in all of the proper places based on those needs. Those monies we even looked at, for PPE for Lisa and health and wellness, should we need more money for PPE? So the answer to that is yes. That being said, there is another grant that is coming available, and that application is due August 31st. That for districts, they are providing $225 per student in each district. And the parameters around what we can use that money for too is quite broad, just like the CARES Act. So that's our next step, Mike, in terms of looking at what else do we need. And that's a pretty big grant that we'll look to apply for by the end of August.
Okay, and students will have, teachers will have some agency in deciding how that money could be spent.
Absolutely, and we've part of our surveying and part of our asking and our my teaching and learning team, they definitely dive deep into seeing what teachers need.
Great, awesome.
And principals have been fantastic resources for that as well.
As always, thank you.
Another question, Mike?
Last question. We talked earlier, Anne-Marie, you spoke earlier about the FFCRA and how that could supplement at least partial pay for absences. And I'm wondering what kind of flexibility human resources have or has in preventing teachers from having to decide on either protecting their income or protecting their health and the health of their community. That would be a very, very difficult choice to have to make, particularly if teachers have limited income. Sacrificing even partial pay would be really, really difficult. So, you had mentioned earlier, Anne-Marie, that there would be some accommodations made. I'm wondering if you could go a little bit deeper into explaining, how much flexibility there is.
Well, and that remains to be seen, of course, because part of it will be making sure that there's equity among the teachers, and we don't know what the volume of requests will be. But generally, an accommodation is a request that can come anytime if someone needs assistance in order to be able to perform their job. I was thinking about the question that Elaine asked the first question, and I was thinking that maybe what I should have said is that sometimes there are, you're talking about the general discomfort with returning question. It could be that we have an employee who has got a psychological condition or a mental health condition that typically doesn't require an accommodation, but because of the pandemic now, it has the conditions have changed such that they might require an accommodation now. So I probably should have added the question, so that now that there might be an accommodation that we can make for them that would help them be able to do that. What was the rest? The whole general having to choose between. I don't know what to tell you. I think part of this will be an educational effort, try to make sure that our employees understand the precautions that we're taking to make the workplace as safe as possible. And I think our teachers are, in some ways, as far as the child care thing, they've got some options there through the FFCRA, and there is some opportunity, depending on what the person has got in their contract, to make up the difference between what the FFCRA provides them and what their full salary would be if they've got accumulated time that they can use. So that would be the next step, to look and see if they can add the two together to make up the full salary. Like I said, let's say that the FFCRA entitles them to 2/3. Then the other third, like every third day, they would need to use 1 day of their own time to make up the full salary.
I've heard that model. Thank you so much, Emery. I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Well, I erroneously said that Mike was last but not least, but it turns out that Rich Eckel is last, but not least. So Rich, are you there? There he is.
Thanks. Thank
Hey.
you for your recognizing the junior committee member from Stowe. I don't have any questions at the moment. There's a lot to process, and thankfully I have very smart colleagues that have asked most of the questions that I was even thinking about. So I yield my time back to Elaine, who I think may have some more questions.
Is that true? Do you have more questions?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
That was very astute of him to remember that I said that. Actually, one question that I don't think you'll have the answer to, but if we could get it, is I would love to see a dollar figure for the amount that we've spent on everything sort of COVID related right now. I have some legislators asking for that as they go into budget negotiations for the state budget. And as we do some advocacy to understand exactly how much money we're spending on this. I know it's probably hard to parse out, but that would be good to have.
Actually, not really. So not that we would have an amount to be able to give to you tonight, but I would say, and Pat, maybe I won't speak, Pat, I'll let you speak, but the truth is we are tracking.
Okay. And we are actually tracking that right now. We try to make sure that any expenditures related to this are charged to one particular account so that we can just pull it out easily when we need it. So
that's great. Thank you.
Okay. So if
I want to say there's a policy question that I'm not sure if it's really school committee policy, but the guidance on mask for pre-K, K, and 1, I'm not comfortable with. That it's encouraged but not required. And I know some districts may take the step to say that they're going to make it a district policy. I don't really know if that falls under our purview or not. But as a parent of 2 kids in those age groups, when I read that, I said, oh, that might be the biggest impediment for me to send my kids back. So I think it warrants a discussion. And also I hope that the transportation guidance changes, because the 3 foot on a bus doesn't make a lot of sense to me if we're trying to do 6 feet in the schools. If we say 3 foot in the schools is not good enough, so we're not going to do a full return because it's at 3 feet, but it's okay on the bus, that's a bit of a disconnect for me.
Yeah, I think the difference of, Elaine, that we want to keep in the back of our minds is, my concern with the 3 foot mark for the school day is that the students would be sitting there for hours. Right. And so that's my concern, and which is why I'd like to give more distance to that. I think that we're going to have to wait and see how the bus routes actually start to pull together. And I would say too, again, we have the most amazing parents. Honestly, we just really do. And the number of parents who've reached out to me and said, hey, if you need us to drive, we'll drive. So I am getting a lot of that, or let me know what we can do to support the process. And so, I've said to folks, I may reach back out to you on this.
And I would say that we should wait and see what the guidance is about the masks. I don't think we're prepared relative to the younger children. So if we have more information about that next week, if we can get clarity on that, that would be good. So the only question I have, and it's more of a clarification, I don't know if it was stated explicitly, but even if we go to a hybrid model, is it correct that if parents want their children to learn remotely, that we offer that option for them as well?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Leah. Yes, Leah.
I have one more question, but it's really, I wonder if Pat could just share with the public what she shared with us on the Google Doc about, or on the Excel spreadsheet, whatever it was, about how donations can be made. Because I know that some families would love to help and, monetarily. So Pat, what did you tell us?
Well, basically what I said is we can accept a donation at a school, or you could mail a donation to the central office at 50 Mechanic Street in Bolton. But basically, it's like any other donation. We request that you, you know, have a check and not cash. We don't take cash donations. We also, if the donation is in excess of $500, or if it's $500 or more, it has to come before you, especially because if it's earmarked for a specific purpose, you need to approve the donation. So if you were to mail a check into, say, one of the secretaries, drop off a check to one of the secretaries, she would then send it up to central office and tell us that it was a donation for something specific, and we would handle it internally, put it in the proper account for whatever purpose it's deemed.
Thank you. Amy? Can't hear you.
No?
Yes,
Yeah,
a little
little
bit.
louder.
How about now?
That's
That's better.
Okay. I apologize. I got interrupted before by my kids and my dog, and right as I was talking, like kind of lost my train of thought. But I just wanted to point out for those who are watching on YouTube, and I've heard that there's almost 150 people watching, which is
131.
Okay.
Oh, now there's only 106.
It's a lot. It's a lot of interested people. That this frequently answered questions document that the school committee members are referring to answers. There's other questions in here that have been answered by the people who know the answers to them, and that those are going to be posted. As I understand it, they're going to be posted on the website. And so rather than take up more time with this meeting and ask those questions where the answers are already going to be posted, I just wanted to point out that those there will be more detailed information that's going to be shared.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other, I had, that's it. Thank you.
And I would encourage people to continue to, first of all, look at the FAQs, and if they have additional questions, to continue to send them so that we make sure that we hear from everybody.
Are we going to be posting the presentation on the website?
Yes.
And the results of the survey too?
Well, the survey,
everything that we put out tonight goes up there.
Anything related to fall school reopening, I will be putting on the website. You know, as soon as we present it to you folks, then we certainly make it available for public consumption.
And I think that that's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Todd. I appreciate that. We generally don't go to the public first before we go to school committee. So I want to put that out there, because I think sometimes people will say, well, why didn't you tell us last week? Well, because we didn't have a school committee now. You know, so, you know, a lot of that stuff will be posted, you know, within the next couple of days after tonight.
all right. Alita, did you have something you wanted to say?
The presentations are already posted in there. As soon as they were presented to the school committee, I posted them.
Thank you.
As soon as you guys had a chance to view them first, they went right up. So they are on there now.
Thank you. And I think that's a good point. And I know it's difficult, but it's protocol that the stuff comes to the school committee first, and then it can be disseminated to the public. So, and I know Rich had another comment or question. Rich, you there?
I am here. I wanted to ask a quick question that this might not be the right forum, but I noticed that the MIAA voted unanimously to start sports later in September. So I wanted to know, is this the time to discuss that? Is that material, or is that
Say at 9:02 we could kick it to next week, unless Brooke can answer it in 30 seconds.
I can answer that probably pretty quickly, to be honest with you, because it came up again today at the meeting with the commissioner. So I would let you know that, again, this has nothing to do with the school district right now. This is really with MIAA and the commissioner.
So, Rich, we can put
All right,
that
we'll discuss more next time.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
put it on the agenda with the report next week. Okay, if there are no objections, I believe we have to make a motion to give the superintendent some direction. You want to read the motion, Elaine?
Yes. Where is it? Oh, I move that the school committee support the district administration's continued work and efforts toward building a hybrid model that the school district anticipates following to start the 2020-2021 school year.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Second.
Oh, Sharon beat you to it, Steve. Okay, any further discussion or comments?
I just want to make sure that I know that our principals are still on here, so I'm not sure if any of them have anything that they want to add after hearing everything, and maybe they do or don't, but I just want to make sure that they've got the opportunity to say anything. So
Sure.
could we just touch base with the principals?
Okay.
quickly, Kathy?
I know that Elaine had a question. Let me hear from Elaine and then I'll open it up to the principals.
Oh,
Yes.
I was just going to say the administration made a strong case for sort of abandoning starting school in the full in-person model, but I didn't know if we needed to advocate or if there was any defense for not going straight to a full remote.
Could I recommend that we have that discussion at the next meeting next week? And that, okay. So Alita, are you keeping track of what we say we're going to kick to next week?
Sure.
Thanks. I've made a note. All right. So yeah, first of all, I want to thank the principals for hanging in there with us in addition to all the work that you've been doing. But if anybody has anything.
We have, excuse me, Madam Chairman,
yes,
we have a motion and second on the floor.
I'm sorry. Well, I opened it up for discussion. So now we have to vote if there's no more discussion, and then the principals. Does that keep me out of Robert's Rules Court?
Certainly does.
Thank you. All right. So,
Kathy, can I help you since I have a checklist?
yes.
Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Dr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Elaine?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Okay. So now, if any of the principals or members of the leadership team have any other comments or questions for us, this is your opportunity. Brooke, I'm going to let you call.
Sure, I'll just turn to the principals, and I don't want you to feel that you have to say anything tonight, and I know it's already so late, but if there's anything that's on any of your minds that you want to put forward here with your thinking about the different models, anything succinct, I'm not looking for like a 3 or 5 minute, just if you've got a comment or two to make, I think that now would be a good time if you wanted to. So if you do have a comment or two, just raise your hand so I know. Nope. Not seeing anything, Kathy.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone. I'm going to bring this part of the agenda to a conclusion, knowing that we are going to continue. Next week, we're going to hear from special education. We're going to get more information about athletics and requirements for masks and the policy implications for that, and also talk about Brooke's proposal that perhaps students start later than the original start date that we have planned, and then anything else that related to this. Leah?
Extended learning.
Extended learning.
It's on the list, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay.
So Kathy, can we say to our principals, we thank you so much. Please don't feel the need to stay on now. We thank you so much for your time and for your efforts and for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I echo that. Enjoy what's left of the evening. The night is still young. Under new business, Mike Horish sent me a communication to indicate that he's willing to engage in his discussion at our summer workshop. And so we will move that to the summer workshop. Thank you, Mike. Steve had something that he wanted to bring up briefly relative to banking. Steve.
Yes, I certainly do. We have been engaged, are engaging, and will be engaged even more in the future with our social activity or our social activism program, anti-racial program. And I read recently an article that a lot of Black-owned financial institutions are undercapitalized. And that means that they could use an addition to their deposit base. And I think it only is proper for us in pursuing our objectives in this area to investigate which financial institutions, perhaps in Eastern Massachusetts, perhaps in Massachusetts, are principally Black-owned or minority-owned, and that we should look at putting some of our monies into these at least an institution. And we certainly have enough money that sits in the banks and moves in and out of various accounts that we could be a positive source for for an institution, or if it's a multiple set of institutions. They're all federally insured, so there's no problem with putting the money at risk, but it would help the financial stability and the underwriting of these institutions. And I would like us to consider this sooner rather than later.
Okay, not sure what the procedure is for doing that, but I'd like to leave that with Brooke to work with Pat on.
Sure.
And bring up perhaps have some information for us at our summer workshop in August.
That sounds great. We can be ready for that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Steve, for thinking of that and bringing that to our attention. Oh, look
Kathy?
at Elaine. You made Elaine happy, Steve.
Yes, I can see that.
Yeah, Brooke.
And Leah too. Leah's smiling too. I've got everybody smiling at me on that one.
I just wanted to make sure, and I'm not sure, Pat, whether it was you, did we not have a donation that we needed to accept tonight?
Yes, I have that on the agenda.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Our last item
graduation
on the agenda.
Okay.
So we do have an email from Dan DeMayo, who is the senior class president, and he had sent this letter to Mr. Cullinane to share with us. The class of 2020 want to leave an amount of $2,000 for a Change the World scholarship dedicated to Mrs. Carter. The class of 2019 challenged us to leave money to the class of 2021 for this scholarship, and we wish to do so in the amount specified. We also want to donate $3,000 of our class funds to the custodial staff for them to use on new equipment, machinery, or anything they may need, want to continue their honorable work within our building. And then he just goes on to say about, he realizes it needs to be approved by the school committee, and that he will present the gifts at graduation as past presidents have done. And I believe Elaine has a motion.
Yes. I move to accept a $5,000 donation from the class of 2020, $2,000 of which for the Change the World scholarship dedicated to Mrs. Carter, and $3,000 to the custodial staff for them to use on new equipment, machinery, or anything else they may need.
Second. Steve, and everybody but Steve, for record. Okay, Alita, do you want to run us through the voting?
All righty. Ready? Here we go. Dr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Leah? Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Elaine?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Anonymous?
Okay, thank you. So can we have a motion to accept the consent agenda, Elaine?
Sure, I move to approve the consent agenda of July 22nd, 2020, containing the warrants of July 17th, 2020, and the meeting minutes of July 1st, 2020.
Second.
Second.
Steve seconds. Vote, Alita?
All righty, here we go again. Dr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Amy?
Abstain, I don't know what.
That's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Leah?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Elaine?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We've articulated the items for next agenda. Our only agenda item will be focused on the issues related to the opening of school and an update of those things. And now I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, Elaine.
Second.
Okay, second. And Brett seconds. Okay, Alita?
All right, here we go again. Dr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
Rich?
Affirmative.
Lane?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
And that's a wrap.
Okay, Alita, thank you. And thank you, everyone. And Brooke, thanks to you and Todd and Pat and Anne Marie and Rob and everybody on your team. This is an unbelievable undertaking. And thank you for keeping us informed. And thanks to the folks on the school committee who will be on the local task force, and Elaine for being on the district task force. And so there'll be more information coming. And thanks for your responsiveness to the members of our communities. And it's 9:15. I know some of you that the night is just beginning. For some of us, it's coming to an end. So have a great weekend, and I'm sure we'll all be in touch. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.